Welcome back to Creative Excuses and to Chocolate Edition version 2. This is a gigantic Baldur's Gate 3 mod that converts so much of the game's build systems and hopefully makes them better and even more enjoyable. The bones of the game are great, so this is kind of a vanilla plus mod, hence it is chocolate. Let's just go through this PDF. There are 60 pages of changes, so this is going to take a little while. But before that, if you want to catch my full Chocolate Edition run videos as they come out, consider joining as a channel member. For just $1 a month, you're going to get to see all of the episodes for Sunny and Paul's story as it comes out at roughly one video per week. Joining as a member is the best way to support both the mod and the channel, so thanks to all the channel members for supporting the series, Chocolate Edition, and me. All right, let's jump into it. So, table of contents, we got the overview, mod compatibility, intelligent initiative, which is a major system that we're going to have to talk about, new classes, vanilla classes, spell adjustments, rebalanced feats, and some miscellaneous changes. Let's get to it. First up, let's recommend some mods to go alongside Chocolate Edition. I've got a few different categories here that are helpful for you. Difficulty customization mods like Tactician Enhanced are fantastic. If you're a min-maxer, Chocolate Edition is definitely going to make the game easier for you. But if you play like me, where you're suboptimal, you don't really need a difficulty customization. But again, if you're a min-maxer, you should definitely customize the difficulty. Tactician Enhanced lets you add extra actions or health to enemies, and that's a great choice. Randomizer mods for encounters or enemies can also be very useful. I've heard a lot of people like Ancient Mega Pack plus REL. That's a good option. I don't personally like it. I don't think it's super balanced, but you can use it if you'd like. New spells or class additions, these have varying compatibility. Stuff like Mistress spells are compatible, but there's not a compatibility patch, so they're going to have slightly different balance than Chocolate Edition is going to. I think in the future, I might make a compatibility patch for Mistress spells to make it play a little better, but I haven't done so just yet. Appearance mods are fully compatible, except for companion magic mirror mods. These are sort of compatible. You can use them. They're just going to prevent you from having the default new class for each of the companions, but you can always respec into those. Companion replacers, though, are fully compatible, so that's good. Item mods are fully compatible, except for I have made a few changes, and stuff that interacts with the smite spells, and Divine Smite specifically, will have some issues. Okay. This is the first major change that Chocolate Edition makes, and it's actually a pretty big balancing lever that I've tried to use. Basically, in Baldur's Gate 3, initiative is a little broken. You only have a d4, so 1d4, to determine initiative, and that leads to very low variance in initiative rolls. But on top of that, you also have tools like Alert and your dexterity modifier that can add absurd amounts to your initiative modifiers. For example, if you have 20 dexterity, which is very easy to get, and alert, you would have a plus 10 to your initiative, but it's only a d4. So you have, what, 2.5 times the die size in initiative bonuses? And that's not even the highest you can get. You can get much higher initiative bonuses than just a plus 10. So that's really strong. On the flip side, intelligence is a dump stat in the game. It is very rare that you'll see a build have any intelligence at all unless it is a wizard or maybe an arcane trickster. Even Eldritch Knights don't need intelligence unless you're doing a funky build with like Shillelagh or something, right? So I wanted to change both of these things. I wanted to increase variance a little bit, and I also wanted to make intelligence more valuable. I did this through Intelligent Initiative, which changes player initiative to 1d8 plus your dexterity modifier plus your intelligence modifier. Initiative for enemies below Tactician difficulty is 1d8 plus their dexterity modifier, and above Tactician, they get the same exact bonuses. They also get an initiative bonus from their intelligence. The reason I did this, again, is to buff intelligence, to bring it up and make it less of a dump stat. Now you're going to want to have at least 10 intelligence if you don't want a penalty to your initiative. But also, if you can get high dexterity and high intelligence, that's how you're going to get high initiative. Alert, the feat, has also been changed. It's been nerfed. It is no longer a +5. It is only a +1 to your initiative. It comes with some other benefits that we're going to talk about later, but it has been nerfed. So initiative is very different. Summons are also not affected by this system, I don't think. They might be, but they're a little hit and miss. But this changes the balance of the game a lot. It pretty much makes every character in the game, except for wizards and maybe, again, arcane tricksters, mad, because you're going to want at least a little bit of intelligence. However, I did make a lot of ways for you to get additional intelligence, like basic training that can boost your intelligence to 13, or adept training, which can boost your intelligence to 15. Then there's the intelligence items, or of course, you can just put stats into it. There's lots of ways to get initiative, but it's different than the vanilla game, and it's a balancing lever. By making characters more mad, I have made it so that you are either punished just a little bit for dumping intelligence, or you have to put less points into your primary stats so that you can have reasonable intelligence. I got really tired of people running around with 8 intelligence. The 4 people in charge of saving the world should not all be dumb as a box of rocks. That's the big thing. Okay, let's move on. This is going to take forever if I take this long for everything. There are new classes for the Origin companions. These classes are generally 1-level dips that are about as powerful as a 1-level dip in Cleric plus a feat. They are very strong for 1-level dips, but they're also very flavorful, and they are unique to each of the major companions. However, there are also minor classes for each of the minor companions, like Halsin, Minthara, Jaheira, and Minsk. Dark Urge also has a minor class, and these are just to make these characters a little bit more flavorful to play, but they're not as deep as the Origin classes. First up, we've got God's favorite princess, Shadowheart. She has the Daughter of Darkness class. This is a level 1 spellcaster with a unique Paladin plus Cleric limited spell list. She gets Sanctuary, Command, Divine Favor, Guiding Bolt, her own custom Wrathful Smite based on her torturous background, Healing Word, Disguise Self, and Shield of Faith. Her Wrathful Smite is a variant that does not cost a bonus action, and it scales in cantrip. It scales in damage at cantrip levels up to 3d6, which is pretty fun. New in version 2, though, is that she has Shadowbound weapons and Twilight-bound weapons, depending on her progress in the story, which is a super cool feature. There is actually a check for the tag that gets applied to Shadowheart when she makes a certain decision in Act 2 that will change how this ability functions a little bit. With Shadowbound weapon or Twilight-bound weapon, she's able to bind a dagger, a spear, a scimitar, or a glaive to herself, which causes that weapon to roll with her wisdom, and it gives it some sort of feature. Daggers get extra damage, spears get the ability to apply Blade Ward at like a 50% chance, scimitars get to apply the Tortured condition, which gives enemies or things that you hit disadvantage on Constitution saves, and glaives give resistance to and reduce damage taken from force damage, almost like it's there to counter Radiant Retort specifically. It's very cool stuff, and you only get access to scimitars with the Shadowbound, and you only get glaives with Twilight-bound, which is very fun. Shadowheart also has Shadow Step. If she's lightly obscured, she can teleport to another lightly obscured location, which is really cool. She's a Wisdom caster, and she gets Cleric and Paladin class dialogue tags. Now, the Paladin tag there does have a couple bugs associated with it. I should take it away, but basically, you can break your oath in conversation as Shadowheart, but she doesn't actually have an oath. It's just attached to having the Paladin class tag, so it's kind of funky. You got to do some specific things if you want to break her Paladin oath, and it just causes the Oathbreaker Knight to show up, and that, can get weird. If you take her class past level 2, you're going to continue gaining spell slots, Cleric spells, and Trickery Domain spells, as well as Divine Strike Poison. This is just in case you want to do like a challenge run where you leave the Origin classes as their initial starting class in Chocolate Edition. It's not really intended to be the way that you play her. The intended way is that you'd still take her into Trickery Domain. Gale is up next, and he got some nerfs from version 1.6 if you've played that, because he was really overperforming. He was just really, really strong. Everything that Gale does is based on him being the bearer of the Karsite Orb, which is really interesting for his story. Little spoiler there, but whatever. The game's old. Like, you should know this stuff. Especially if this is not your first time playing the game. You should know this stuff. Anyway, he gets a couple new passives and some features through those. So he gets Karsite Recovery, which is arcane recovery charges actually regenerate on short rests up from long rests, which is a huge buff. He also gains up to 3 arcane recovery charges based on his level. He gets 1 charge at level 1, another at level 5, and another at level 9. His Defender of the Orb passive depends on how many Arcane Recovery charges he has available. If he has 3 Arcane Recovery charges available, he's going to increase his armor class by 2. So you'll notice at level 9, that would happen if he does not take any wizard levels. But if he takes wizard levels, then he's going to get this pretty early on. I think at level 3 or level 4, which is pretty cool. Power of the Orb is another one that depends on Arcane Recovery charges. When casting a damaging cantrip, he deals an additional 1d4 damage if he's got at least 1 Arcane Recovery charge available. Now, this Arcane Recovery charge available means he actually has that stored in the bank. So you can choose to spend your Arcane Recovery charges on a spell slot, or you can keep it and empower yourself with +2 armor class, or with an additional 1d4 damage on cantrips. He also has Carsight Magic, which is that he's going to gain up to 2 additional spell slots that increase in power as he gains levels, up to a maximum of 4th and 5th level spell slots. This means that if you play Gale as like an Arcane Trickster, you take 1 level of Orb Bearer as his starting class, and then you take Arcane Trickster the rest of the way, he is still going to get a 4th and 5th level spell slot. He's just only going to get 1 of those. This means he's always going to become a powerful spellcaster and is really fun that way. He also gets another one called Channel the Orb, which is that he can use Arcane Recovery charges to create new spell slots that last until long rest, similar to elixirs. These unlock at normal spell slot progression breakpoints, just like you would expect. This is an alternative to the Arcane Recovery ability that wizards have, but instead of just recovering spell slots, he's actually generating new ones, which means he doesn't have to have spent a spell slot to use his recovery charges. That's kind of the difference. He gets wizard spells and cantrips. He's an intelligence caster, and he can learn spells like a wizard. However, this is going to limit the number of spells he can learn and prepare. I think this note is actually incorrect. I think it is 1 plus his intelligence modifier. So maximum of like 6 or 7 spells, depending on how high you get your stats. However, if you keep the class past level 2, you're going to continue getting spell slots, learning spells from the wizard spell list, and gaining Arcane Recovery charges at the normal wizard rate. This means you can actually increase the number of prepared spells if you just keep his class. It means you'll miss out on some wizard features, but obviously you don't really need them. You have some really good features right here, and you'll get as many spells as you want. All right, Karlach. Karlach is awesome. She gets the Heart of Fire class. And this is going to do a lot for her. She gets Hellfire Rage, which is a passive that allows her weapon and unarmed attacks to deal 1d4 additional Hellfire damage, as well as causing any additional fire damage that she deals to also be Hellfire. This comes with the Rage ability and 2 Rage charges. Now, so this only activates when she's actually raging, but it is really strong because it means when you rage, you're going to get +2 damage from the rage itself, and then you're going to get an additional 1d4 unresistible fire damage and unimmunable fire damage in the form of Hellfire on all of her attacks, which is really good. She also gets +2 to initiative and ignores difficult terrain, because she like escaped from hell. Like she's pretty good at getting out of dodge. She also gets guaranteed extra attack at level 5, regardless of any other class level selections. This is a funky passive, but it basically means that you can take 1 level of Heart of Fire and 4 levels of a martial character, and you'll still get your extra attack at level 5, so that you still hit your power spikes. This does mean you can take Heart of Fire with like 11 levels of a caster, and you'll end up with extra attack anyway. That's not the intended method, but I didn't want to go through a whole bunch of effort to limit that. So you are the police for your own builds. If you want to min-max, yes, you can do that with this. But these classes are meant to be role-played. This is meant for Karlach only, so I'm expecting that you'll still kind of play her as a martial character. So you still hit your level breakpoints at level 5. Karlach gets a really cool feature for herself called 10 Years of Fury, which is actually a unique rage that causes her attacks to explode in Hellfire fireballs. Now, this rage unlocks at level 10. Even with only the 1 level in the class, it's still going to unlock at level 10, and it is only usable once per game. I will let you figure out what the level 10 unique rage that lets her attacks explode in fireballs is for. She's also very interesting. She gets to be a Constitution caster instead of anything else because she's casting spells out of the fire of her heart. Makes sense to me. She gets barbarian class tags if you want to use her in dialogue. And new in version 2, if you continue in the class past level 2, you're going to get additional rage charges. You're going to get relentless rage, which is a barbarian feature. And you will get 3 modified fire damage spells that will work while raging, which is very fun. All right, Wyll with the Blade of Frontiers class up next. Wyll is pretty cool. He gets a couple of things. He gets Blade's Flourish, which is an at-will flourish. That's the bonus action attack that deals half of his weapon damage plus the full weapon damage riders, and it possibly sets enemies off balance. This is at will, so he can always bonus action attack with his rapier or his weapon or whatever, or with his one-handed finesse weapon. It's very cool. This really lets him be the Blade of Frontiers, even though he's still going to get, as we see over here, Eldritch Blast plus Agonizing Blast passive. So he gets to add his Charisma modifier to his Eldritch Blast damage, regardless of any additional Warlock levels, in case you want to play him some other way. He also gets Blade Ward, a unique variant of the spell that costs only a bonus action and has no cooldown. So the kind of intended play loop is that every turn you're going to make a decision between Blades Flourishing and Blade Warding. And it's kind of fun. You get to choose, do I want to do some damage and maybe help set an enemy off balance and give an ally advantage, or do I want to use Blade Ward and defend myself? Now, this Blade Ward change is also a pretty big one because there are other changes to the base Blade Ward spell where it's no longer an action, it's a bonus action, but it has a cooldown. So the fact that this has no cooldown makes Wyll quite potent defensively, which is pretty interesting. One other effect that he gets at level 1 is that he gets the Daredevil Gloves effect, which means he can cast any spell in melee range without disadvantage. I did make some changes to this passive to make it less clunky. You can kind of just turn it on and off now. You don't have to be threatened specifically, which requires a melee combatant in front of you. You can just use it. It's just going to turn your spell into a melee spell. Much, much better than it was in the vanilla game. As you would expect, Wyll is a Charisma caster, and he has Warlock class tags. If you continue in the Blade of Frontiers past level 2 for his class, you're actually going to gain 2 Natural Explorer Ranger passives, because he is sort of a ranger. You get the Mage Breaker passive from Ranger, and you will get a unique Pact of the Chain familiar and buffs, which we're going to talk about later from the Warlock changes. This means he is sort of a Warlock plus Beastmaster Ranger kind of vibe put together, but his Pact of the Chain familiar is unique. He gets a Hell's Boar, I believe is what it's called, which is pretty cool. It's a like flaming pig with big tusks. Sick. And Pact of the Chain has gotten some serious buffs, so this is actually like pretty interesting. He has a very interesting kit if you want to stick it out and play his class all the way through. All right, Astarion is up next, and most of his power budget comes in the form of one spell called Vampiric Touch. He is a Night Stalker, he is a vampire, and so his unique ability is going to be a cantrip variant of Vampiric Touch that deals 1d10 damage that scales all the way to 3d10 necrotic damage and heals you for some of the damage done. This ability can also sneak attack if you have advantage and do not have disadvantage. The sneak attack damage is 1d6, just like a rogue at base, and it gains an additional die every odd level, just like a rogue, all the way up to 5d6 at level 11. This makes it a very, very powerful ability. Now, in order to use this with the extra damage, it does cost a sneak attack charge. And as part of this, I've actually limited sneak attack charges to 1 with a hard cap, so you can only ever have 1. You can't use, levels in Night Stalker and Rogue to get 2 of these. You can only sneak attack once per round. But it's very powerful, obviously. 3d10 plus 5d6, that's up to 30, and that's up to 30. So up to 60 damage, and you heal for some of the damage done. I don't remember the specific amount. It's kind of confusing how I did the math on it, but it works out to a decent bit that you're going to heal, which is really cool. He also gets Cunning Action Hide, which is the exact same as the Rogue's level 2 class feature. He gets Vampiric Charm, which is Persuasion and Deception expertise. And he gets Supernatural Speed, which is just some extra movement speed, because he's going to be playing in melee distance. He is a Charisma caster, not Intelligence. I know this doesn't pair well with Arcane Trickster, but it's Astarion, man. Like, it's gotta be a Charisma caster. Gotta be. He gets Rogue class tags, and if you take his class past level 2, you're going to gain all of the Cunning actions. You're also going to get Dirty Trick Vicious Mockery, which takes your charisma to cast. You'll gain Evasion for some damage reduction, an additional feat just like a rogue would get, and you will of course get Reliable Talent. Overall, Night Stalker is a very potent class, even with just the one level, and if you take it all the way, it turns into sort of just a vampiric rogue class with a little bit of roasting as you would expect from Astarion. Quite fun. Finally, for the major classes, we have Lae'zel and the Astral Soldier class. She gets some interesting stuff. First up, Githyanki's in the game can parry, and they are so freaking annoying. So what if Lae'zel was annoying? She gets a feature that allows her to reduce the damage of any physical damage taken by 1d4 as long as she has a reaction point available to spend. So if she hasn't used her reaction, she can parry as many attacks as she wants in one turn, as many instances of physical damage taken by 1d4 per turn. However, if she spends the reaction, say on a shield spell or on a riposte or anything like that, then she will no longer have the reaction point available to spend and she will no longer be parrying. Speaking of which, Lae'zel has a way to spend her reaction point on riposte. Lae'zel can make a normal weapon attack with no additional damage against an enemy that attacks her and misses, and it costs her reaction point. So she has a way to benefit from holding onto her reaction, and she has a way to spend that reaction built into her kit. Very, very fun. It means she's going to get to attack off of her turn a lot, which is quite cool. And maybe a little too powerful. Not really sure. She also gets a fighting style choice, which is really fun. And these are two unique fighting styles to just her class. You've got Githyanki Power and Githyanki Acrobatics. Githyanki Power just adds her intelligence modifier to attacks with great swords and long swords, so she gets some additional attack damage if you want to go that way. And if you go with the Githyanki Acrobatics, once per battle, you can leap a giant distance at the cost of 3 meters of movement speed, but no other action resource. And when you land, you get a free action attack with one of your equipped main hand weapons, either melee or ranged. This is modeled after the first time you meet Lae'zel. She leaps across you and threatens you. This is what you can do. You can jump across the battlefield. And when I say this is a big distance, I mean it's like an enhanced leap kind of jump. And then when you land, you can attack. It's sort of like a Gloomstalker Ranger's ability to free action attack on the first turn. But instead, you get to choose when you use it, and it's also a mobility resource, which is really fun. She, just like Karlach, gets the guaranteed extra attack at level 5, regardless of any class selections, with the same limitations and reasoning. She has fighter class tags, and if you take her past level 2, you're going to gain the champion fighter class features and an additional feat. The champion class has also seen some really big changes that we're going to talk about in a little while. All right, let's move on to page 13. We're done with the major classes and we are on to the minor classes. These are just some extra flavorful bonuses for Jaheira, Minsc, Halsin, and Minthara. Dirge also gets some, even though he's not a companion. These are not classes in the traditional sense either. These are actually added to the characters themselves. So no matter what class combination you choose, they will always have these bonuses as long as Chocolate Edition is installed and you haven't overwritten their origin tables. So the Dark Urge gets a new passive called Storm Cursed Memories. This new passive unlocks Booming Blade and Shocking Grasp by default, which is big. Now, once per turn, damaging an enemy with either of these cantrips triggers a DC 19 history check to check your memory. If you pass the check, you can use either of these cantrips a second time as a free action on that turn. The casting modifier for Shocking Grasp should be whatever your spellcasting modifier is, but it also might follow the Illithid power rules. Now, this is huge, like huge, that you can cast either of these a second time. Booming Blade is an action, it costs a weapon attack, it's a weapon attack, right? And you can only cast it once per turn normally, unless you have an extra action. But with this, you can cast it a second time as long as you pass that history check. So Dark Urge Gnomes, rejoice. However, Shocking Grasp is now a bonus action, which means you can trigger this with a bonus action and fire off a Booming Blade or another Shocking Grasp. It's really fun, it's really cool, and it really leans into the fact that Dark Urge canonically is a Storm Sorcerer, and Dark Urge is, well, your memory's lost. So if you pass the check to check your memory, you kind of remember, you get a feeling, some muscle memory for how to make these spells do the whole like murder hobo thing for you. It's pretty fun. Next up, we've got Halsin. Now, Halsin is supposed to be this renowned healer, and instead when you meet him, he's just like a bear dad, right? So we're going to make him a healer. He's got natural healer, and this new passive unlocks a unique version of the Preserve Life channel divinity called Preserve Nature. This is going to heal all non-undead or construct allies in the area around Halsin at the cost of a natural recovery charge, and he gets 2 of those. So he gets to cast Preserve Nature twice per day. It's super small, but it lets him really live up to his healer potential, which is good, because normally I'm pretty sure he's just a moon druid that turns into a bear. Like, that's nice, but you're supposed to be the healer, man. Come on. Now he is. All right, Minthara is the Drow commander. Up to every other turn, so every second turn, Minthara can use her own variant of command approach as an action. When she does this, she can follow it up with a variant of Commander's Strike as a free action, commanding an ally to make an attack for a reaction point. This basically just lets her have a lot of crowd control through command approach, and she can turn that crowd control into an attack via an ally, which is pretty cool. It makes her commanding of both enemies and allies alike. It's very nice, very thematic for the powerful Minthara. Jaheira, she gets the High Harper passive, which unlocks the ability Practice Strike, which is described down here. Now, before we talk about Practice Strike, she gets 2-weapon fighting style, which does some really cool things, as we're going to see a lot later. But basically, you can attack twice with your offhand weapon. Very fun. Practice Strike is an ability where Jaheira can attack with both her main and offhand for just the cost of a bonus action once per turn. Now, Practice Strike benefits from the extra damage from 2-weapon fighting style, but it does not benefit from the extra offhand attack at and after level 5 that the fighting style offers. That, again, you'll see below. She still gets the 2 attacks with her bonus action, but it uses her main hand and her offhand at the same time. It's actually like a really cool feature. Maybe this is what I should actually implement for 2-weapon fighting. Maybe that's what this passive should be. I'll have to think about that. But this is really cool. It means she really gets to lean into the 2 scimitar wielding druid that she's supposed to be, without having to compromise her ability to cast spells and be a druid. But in all honesty, it is just a reflavoring of the 2-weapon fighting style. This allows you to attack twice with your left hand, and Practice Strike is going to allow you to attack once with your main hand and once with your offhand instead of twice with your offhand. But it is effectively the same thing. You just get a cooler animation. All right, Minsc. Minsc gets Reckless Attack. I don't know what else to say. He is reckless. This is Minsc. He's not a barbarian, but he's a barbarian. And he also gets the lovely passive, Minsc is Tough. This is a passive that reduces all damage taken by the duration of the Minsc is Tough status, which stacks up to 5 and gains 2 stacks each time he takes damage. That's all there is to it. He climbed inside of a mimic and fought his way out. Like, Minsc is tough. So those are all of the companion classes, and we still have so much more to go. We are on page 15. I hope you guys are enjoying this. Let's talk about the classes. Now, all vanilla classes are now going to get an additional feat at level 2. This sort of applies to the origin classes. They get an additional feat at level 3 because I don't want to encourage you to take all the classes all the way. But if you do, you're still going to get the same number of feats. So everyone gets an additional feat at level 2. This makes for some really powerful stuff, and it means multi-classing can be insanely strong. You can get up to 6 feats if you do an 8-4 split as a fighter, or if you just do 2 levels of 6 different classes. There is a lot of stuff you can do, and the feats also inherited a lot of changes, so you should pick some flavor, not just power. That's my recommendation, but also you can just pick power. Do what you want. It's your game. All right, first class with major changes. This is the Paladin. I did make an entire video on just these changes, so I'd recommend you check that out. So we're just going to blast through this really quick. The major changes are that Channel Oath charges have been changed to a long rest resource, and you get up to 8 of them, 9 or 10 if you use some items. Along with that, Divine Smite has been reworked into a passive called Channel Oath Smite that allows you to spend Channel Oath charges on smite damage for any melee weapon attack that you make. These smites add up to 2d8 or 3d8 level 7 or higher, radiant damage to your attack, which is really good, and it allows you to do a lot of super smiting per day. The spell smites have also received some buffs, which we'll talk about later as we go through the spells, and all the channel oath abilities have received buffs or adjustments to make them competitive with smiting. A lot of these are much better than they used to be. Finally, Improved Smite is now a toggleable passive so that you can avoid radiant retorts when you need to. That's just a quality of life thing. It doesn't actually change balance pretty much at all. Okay, the subclasses receive some changes. You can see those here. I would encourage you to read the PDF for this. Basically, a lot of abilities received an increase to their difficulty class. That's just inherent to the spell now. Holy Rebuke lasts longer. Sacred Weapon lasts until long rest, but it takes 2 Channel Oath charges. Inquisitor's Might lasts longer. Abjure Enemy costs a bonus action instead of an action. You're just frightening one enemy. Like, that should be cheaper. Vow of Enmity is now free, but it cannot be used on yourself. Champion's Challenge has increased DC. Turn the Tide grants 1 armor class to every ally that you heal, which is pretty neat. Oathbreaker's Spiteful Suffering costs a bonus action instead of an action, and it's easier to land. Control Undead is easier to land, and Dreadful Aspect is both easier to land and lasts 3 turns up from 2 turns. Dreadful Aspect is now one of the most potent crowd control effects in the game. You can cast this up to 8 times per day and frighten like an entire room of enemies. This is actually ridiculously strong. Oathbreaker is a very good subclass now. But we'll talk about that when we do the tier list. The second class to get some major changes is actually a subclass, and this is Rogues. Specifically, Thief Rogues. Now, the big change here is that we moved the Fast Hands passive from level 3 to level 6. This is the extra bonus action passive. Now, before you absolutely hate me, I made a feat that can give you access to this passive early. That feat is called Reckless, and it does come at a cost, but it means that all of your builds that relied on this feature can now use that feat instead. And this does so many things for the class. It allows me to make some really, really good changes that can add some flavor to the Thief class. So first up, you got Practice made pretty good. This is just advantage on sleight of hand checks so that the Thief is the best thief. You know, you get expertise from being a rogue if you choose it, and then you also get advantage without having to put on gear. That's awesome. The thief should steal stuff. I don't know. The next thing that thieves get is Trick Knife. Now this ability is awesome. You gain the ability to throw up to 4 knives as an action that deals half of your sneak attack dice as damage, plus your dexterity modifier. Now this throw is affected by Tavern Brawler, but it uses its own ability icon separate from the normal throw, and it also inherits melee weapon enhancement bonuses and counts as a melee attack, but it does not inherit damage riders mostly. Sometimes it inherits damage riders. It's kind of weird. It's just a consequence of how I designed this and made it. I didn't want to make it an unarmed attack so that it used strength because that was annoying. It's a whole thing, okay? It does not require advantage to target enemies, and you cannot use this and sneak attack on the same turn. It does cost your sneak attack charge to use. The number of targets scales with your rogue level at cantrip scaling levels, and you shouldn't be able to hit the same target with it twice. You can only hit the same target once. Now, this effectively lets you multiply your sneak attack dice because you're dealing half of your sneak attack dice on each throw. Once you can target 3 or 4 people at levels 5 and 10 rogue respectively, you'll be able to do up to double your sneak attack dice in damage across the field, which is really cool, plus your dexterity modifier. So you're dealing, if you have 20 dexterity, you've got 20 damage from this. It makes Thief an interesting area of effect kind of focused rogue, which is really fun. It's really cool. Trick Knife is quite fun. Next up, you get Fast Hands at level 6. This is the same old passive that we love, but it's beefed up by Fleet Feet, which isn't even listed here. Oh my gosh, I forgot this in here. Okay, there's another passive called Fleet Feet that thieves have. Fleet Feet is a new passive that thieves also get at level 3 instead of Fast Hands that makes Sneak specifically a free action once per turn. So they still have their bonus action and they can sneak every turn. So now at level 6, when they get Fast Hands, they're going to get an extra bonus action, but they also can still sneak for free. So they can do a lot of shenanigans. 2 bonus actions and a free sneak at level 6. At level 9, it's going to get even more ridiculous. Thieves are just the speed demons. They get Cunning Action Leap, a new passive that allows Thief Rogues to jump once per turn as a free action. So you can jump, you can sneak, you can do 2 bonus actions and your action all in one turn as a thief. That is super potent, especially if you add in stuff like 2 weapon fighting and you're doing 2 offhand attacks. You can technically use a thief to make your sneak attack trick knife, right? So you get 4 times your sneak attack dice, or 2 times your sneak attack dice, plus 4 times your dexterity modifier and damage on 4 different targets. Then you can attack 3 times with 2 weapon fighting and your offhand attacks using bonus actions. So your action and your 2 bonus actions are taken care of. And then you can still jump away and sneak. Thieves are ridiculous. They are actually worth leveling all the way up, which is really fun. All right, the other rogues did get some changes though. Assassin gets extra attack at level 6. This is just so they can take advantage of the ability to critically hit surprised enemies. Without that, it really felt like you didn't get much chance. You got 1 guaranteed, maybe 2 guaranteed critical hits per combat. And now you can get, 3. It only adds 1. It's not a huge difference, but it does make a difference. And it means after that first turn is up, the assassin can kind of still, fight things. They get their sneak attack and they get extra attack. They're good at killing. That's what they do. Arcane Trickster got one of my favorite abilities in the entire project. This is at level 6. They unlock Trickster's Flick. This is a new passive that when casting a cantrip, they roll a DC 18 Arcana check. If they pass the check and have a sneak attack charge available, they can quickly cast a second cantrip as a free action, kind of like extra attack at the cost of their sneak attack charge. This feature has a quirk. It's got a toggleable passive so that it works correctly with hasted actions. You can turn it off and back on when you want to use it. Basically, it's a whole thing. The interesting thing about Trickster's Flick is that if you get Arcana as expertise, this will eventually become guaranteed thanks to reliable talent. It is a fun alternative to an Arcane Sneak Attack, though if I'm honest, I think Arcane Trickster could use just a little bit more. Just a little bit. But it is really cool being able to throw out 2 Firebolts, or double Booming Blade, or Lightning Strike, or whatever else. There's a lot of different options that Arcane Trickster can do with Trickster's Flick, which is really fun. You just don't take the sneak attack, instead you take an extra cantrip, which is cool. Swashbucklers also get a similar check at level 6. They get the Swashbuckling passive, which may give them extra attack if they pass a DC 24 acrobatics check. That's a big check. It's just for fun. They don't actually need extra attack because they're already really good, but it is a fun thing. Let them use an acrobatics expertise to get a little extra damage. Eventually, you can probably make this guaranteed as well with reliable talent, but you're going to need a plus 14 through acrobatics checks. So, big deal. All right, moving along. We've got another major class rework. This is the 4 Elements Monk. Very fun features here. Basically, I turn them into a blaster caster. They can spend their key points. They can spend their key points on spells like normal. However, those spells have largely been buffed. There is a lot more damage, and they no longer have Flurry of Blows. They are not just an unarmed spellcasting monk. They're actually a weapon monk. You can use weapon attacks that scale off of your wisdom instead of strength or dexterity, which is really interesting. And instead of having Flurry of Blows, you now have Chill of the Mountain, Fangs of the Fire Snake, and Touch of the Storm, which all cost 1 key point and a bonus action to use. Additionally, if you strike things with your weapon, you also get to roll a DC 17 Nature skill check, and if you pass that skill check, then you get to regenerate a key point. So you have this really fun gameplay loop where you spend your key points on a spell. The next turn you go and you smack them with a staff twice, you build up some key points again, and then you go back to spending your spells. It's a really fun gameplay loop, and this is one of my favorite classes in the game. Additionally, your high-level spells are much more powerful. A lot of them got buffs. We're not going to go over all of them here, But stuff like Flames of the Phoenix now costs an action, a bonus action, and 6 key points, which is insane, right? You're like, Flames of the Phoenix, that's a level 3 fireball, right? No, it is a level 6 fireball. It deals 12d6 damage, so Sozin's Comet is finally here. Freaking awesome. There are also additional spells that have similar costs and different names. There's stuff like a Chain Lightning variant. I think there's a Thunder Wave variant. Is it Thunder Wave? Destructive Wave variant, a Wall of Ice variant, and a few others. Very awesome, lots of fun. Also, they can take Ride the Wind, which no longer requires concentration, so they can fly if they want, which is pretty cool. Basically, 4 Elements is now the avatar that you always wished it was. It does have a few removed features, though, like dexterous attacks. They no longer get that because that breaks stuff. That breaks the ability to make their weapons attack with wisdom, which is really, really annoying, but it happens. I don't know. They also don't have Flurry of Blows, so you're going to sling those spells instead. It's very fun. Way of the Shadow also saw a few buffs. The Shadowheart's Dark Vision ability now allows you to see through magical darkness. This is an ability that lasts all day, but you have to spend key points on it to see through darkness. That kind of sucked, so now you get to see through magical darkness as well and actually use the darkness that the Way of the Shadow creates. You also get Shadowheart's Shadow Blade. This is a new ability. It summons a Shadow Blade using key points. It's equivalent to a level 2 cast of Shadow Blade, so it's just the base level, lasts until long rest, and is very good. It makes them a little darker, a little more psychic-y, and very powerful. However, monks did not receive only buffs. They did get a couple of nerfs. Stunning Strike, for example, is now 2 key points up from 1. The cost is split. It costs 1 to use it no matter what, and it costs 1 point if you hit it. Normally, it's only 1 point if your attack lands and forces the saving throw, but now it's going to be 2 total. This is because Stunning Strike is just ridiculously strong, so if it doesn't have that increased cost, you can take something like the 4 Elements Monk and just pass all of your nature checks and infinitely Stunning Strike all day long. That's a very boring thing to do, so it's got to be more expensive. It's also just crazy that you can just stun lock a boss over and over and over and over and over with Stunning Strike for so cheap. Like, you get so many key points, especially when we talk about the next change, which is the Way of the Drunken Master. Okay, so Stunning Strike costs more. Okay, Way of the Drunken Master. Way of the Drunken Master received some major changes. I also made an entire video on this, so we're going to blast through this. You can go check out the video up there. First up, Cheeky Tipple. This passive has been completely reworked. It now rolls a DC 16 performance check. This is a charisma check whenever you deal damage with a melee weapon or an unarmed attack. If you pass the check, you regenerate a key point. This is a lot like Nature's Plenty from the 4 Elements Monk that we just talked about. Additionally, while drunk, your charisma is set to 13 to help you pass these Cheeky Tipple checks, which is very helpful. It's worth noting Cheeky Tipple works on unarmed attacks, like I said, but that means it works twice on Flurry of Blows. So you can actually generate a lot of key points with this if you're good at passing that DC 16 performance check. Next up is an Intoxicating Strike. This has been changed as well. This attack deals extra unarmed damage equal to your Wisdom modifier, so it deals a bit more, but also you see very quickly, this is a mad class. And it has a +2 bonus to the save DC to inflict drunk on the target. And you want to inflict drunk on your target because Life of the Party is one of the monk's passives, and it says that damaging a drunk target grants you temporary hit points for 2 turns equal to your character level +5. This means if you get them drunk with Intoxicating Strike, you can then hit them for Life of the Party to activate, granting you a bunch of temporary hit points for 2 turns. So for your turn right now and 1 turn afterwards. So the core gameplay loop is to get a target drunk with Intoxicating Strike and then make yourself tanky with Life of the Party. You basically get to refill your hit points every turn, which is awesome. Like, this character level +5, it starts out pretty low. Like, this is only 8 temporary hit points at level 3. But by the end of the game, it's going to be 17 temporary hit points that you theoretically can generate every single turn. That is a ton of extra HP in a fight and can really let you reduce your constitution score if you would like, which is pretty fun. Drunken Technique, this is the Flurry of Blows variant for the Way of the Drunken Master. It has an increased cost. It's 2 points up from 1. Costs 1 to cast, and it costs 1 on hit, just like Stunning Strike that we talked about. This was necessary to make the Intoxicating Strike and Sobering Realization loop a little more satisfying. And because you can generate so many key points, it's very possible that with Drunken Technique, if it didn't cost 2 points, you would actually generate more key points than you spend per turn, which is not how we want this to work. We're not trying to make an infinite key Drunken Master, okay? All right, now the big ability, Sobering Realization. This now causes an enemy to roll a Charisma saving throw, attempting to sober them up. If they fail the saving throw, they sober up and they take an additional 1d8 psychic damage. Now, this doesn't sound like a ton, but that means this ability, if you hit it, brings the total damage up to your unarmed damage, plus 2d8, plus your wisdom modifier, plus 1d8. And it no longer removes your life of the party buff. So you stay tanky, but you deal extra damage. It's also worth noting that 2d8 plus your wisdom modifier always applies when you use Sobering Realization. I think you just have to target a drunk. You just have to target a drunk character for this to work. Overall, it is a lot of damage. Is it as much as a Way of the Open Hand monk? Probably not. But you have the advantage of being a very, very tanky, durable monk thanks to Life of the Party, which is very cool. You also are going to get to use a lot of Stunning Strikes because you can generate key points very easily. Overall, it is fantastic. I think it's a lot of fun to play, and I think you'll have some good success with it. Next up, we've got the Fighter subclass changes, and there's a pretty big one here with Champion, which has been completely reworked. Champion now comes with 2 passives, one called Champion's Power and one called Champion's Precision. These are mutually exclusive passives that one can be turned on at a time. They're both toggles. And what they do is Champion's Power grants your melee weapon attacks increased damage equal to your proficiency bonus. So this is going to end up being +4 at the end of the game. However, at level 7, Champion's Power gets improved to Improved Champion's Power, which also reduces the number required to roll a critical hit with any attack by 2. Which means Champion's Power can be used for some really big damage, especially if you find ways to maybe combine it with Wild Magic Barbarian, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Champion's Precision, on the other hand, this grants your melee weapon attacks a bonus to attack rolls equal to half of your proficiency bonus rounded up, which means in the early game, you're going to get a +1, then it's going to go to +2, and it's going to stick at +2 for the entire game, for the rest of the game from level 5 onward. At level 7, this gets upgraded from Champion's Precision to Improved Champion's Precision, which causes all weapon attacks to ignore resistances, including ranged weapons. So just like this critical hit applies to everything, so does this ignoring resistances. So at level 7, you get the option to turn on Champion's Power, or Improve Champion's Power, or Improve Champion's Precision, so you can choose more damage and better critical hits, or you can choose more accuracy and ignoring resistances. And you can make this choice whenever you want. In between attacks, it doesn't matter. The play loop is that you're just going to hit stuff, and you're going to hit stuff hard, and you're either going to make yourself more accurate, or you're going to make yourself deal more damage, which is pretty fun. Now, you can have, again, either Champion's Precision or Champion's Power active, but not both, unless at level 11, nope, at level 10, you get Champion's Surge, which is a new passive feature that activates when you action surge. When you action surge, you're going to apply the effects of both Champion's Power and Champion's Precision at the same time for the rest of your turn. So if you use action surge at the beginning of your turn to get 2 actions because you know you want to dump a bunch of attacks in, you're going to get additional damage equal to your proficiency bonus. You're going to reduce the number required to roll a critical hit by 2. You're going to improve your accuracy by 2. And you're going to ignore any resistances that the enemy has for the physical damage types, which is incredible. It is so strong. Champion Surge is very fun, and this really becomes just like the default fighter. If you want to play a melee fighter and you don't want to make huge decisions, but you want a small gameplay loop, this is it. You don't unlock any fancy abilities. You don't do any crowd control. All you do is hit stuff and you hit it hard. Champion is very fun. It's very simple. It's a good time. Next up, we have the Ranger, which the base class is what received the most changes here. And these are some pretty big changes. So, favorite enemy, this is a choice of passage that the Ranger class normally gets, has been renamed into Ranger's Training. I think this should probably be changed into Ranger's Journey, but I haven't done that for now. It's called Ranger's Training. And this is a new conceptual idea for the Ranger. Your journeys and studies have taught you many things, but mostly how to survive and thrive on any adventure. You're sort of a magical adventuring fighter. It's kind of the idea, but you've got these specific proficiencies and abilities that you're going to gain. So you've got Mage Breaker. This is pretty standard. You get Concentrated True Strike, which is a bonus action True Strike. It requires concentration, but it has no cooldown. We're going to see some True Strike changes later on as well. Keeper of the Veil, which gives you proficiency in Arcana and the ability to cast Protection from Evil and Good as a bonus action at will, which means as a bonus action for 5 turns, you can grant an ally or yourself Protection from Evil and Good, which you can see those spell changes later as well. But this is very good. It means you can impose disadvantage on a lot of different kinds of things attacking you, and you can become immune to like frighten and fear and all sorts of stuff, just as a bonus action for 5 turns. Very cool. There's also some new ones, like this new Protector one. This allows you to cast Sanctuary without a spell slot once per short rest, or you can cast Warding Bond without a spell slot once per day. This allows you to protect your allies or your catches. If you're like, if you're on a mission to capture someone alive, you can use Protector as a flavor pick to make yourself better at that. Pretty fun. There's also Sage of the Wild, which gives you a new Ranger's Guidance spell that you can cast at will for an action. Ranger's Guidance is a cantrip that provides both the benefits of guidance and bless at the same time. So you get increased abilities on your skill checks, and you get increased attack rolls through bless, and you get increased saving throws through bless all at the same time. It shouldn't stack with either guidance or bless, but sometimes there's bugs. There's also Pilgrim, which is sort of a religious ranger. You can cast Divine Favor with a spell slot, so you can't use it until level 2, but it is pretty good. And Divine Favor is significantly buffed. It now lasts all day, but continues to take your concentration. So it's sort of a radiant damage self buff instead of Hunter's Mark. It takes that sort of slot in a ranger's build. Finally, there is the Wandering Monk, which is based on the idea that the open road is your monastery, and this just lets you use your dexterity as your attacking stat with monk weapons, just like monks can do. But the ranger changes aren't done. There are some new natural explorer options as well. We've got Wasteland Forager, which once per long rest makes you forage good berries, where you find 8 of them. You can just keep them as supplies, or you can use them as healing potions, which is very fun. We've got Wild Endurance, which gives you 1 additional hit point per ranger level. Wasteland Athlete, which gives you proficiency and expertise in athletics. Waste Not, which means you never waste a resource. You actually preserve 4 bottles of grease and 4 bottles of water per long rest. You can sell these or you can throw them at enemies. It's sort of like a create water and grease spell effect, but as a consumable instead of as a spell slot. It's kind of fun, very cool, and you can really get a lot of grease and water going. Finally, there is Tavern Crawler, which is really funny. As a ranger, you're accustomed to bar crawls and bar brawls. When you're drunk, you get a +2 to your armor class. This is currently bugged. I am going to fix it. It does not work with Drunk Monk, which is unfortunate, but it works with everybody else. With Drunk Monk, it is bugged. That will be fixed in a future update, so hopefully you'll get that soon. If you're on console, that's probably going to take a while for you to get that. I'm so sorry. Another change that Rangers received is they now get cantrips at level 1. You only get 1 cantrip, and you're only going to get it at level 1, so this is your only Ranger cantrip, but you deserve one of them. For those, you can take Shillelagh, which allows you to use your Wisdom modifier on any simple weapon, so you can play a Wisdom-based Ranger, which is pretty fun. This includes working on short bows as well, by the way, and it lasts all day, which is also really nice. Ray of Frost, which has received some small buffs. Produce Flame, which now lets you dip your weapon in the Produce Flame, which is a really cool feature. as well as throw it. Of course, you can either use it as a damaging cantrip or you can use it as a utility. Like you're a ranger, you're out in the wilds, you've got a torch for a hand. It's perfect. Thorn Whip, which is a bonus action. Shocking Grasp, which is also a bonus action. Poison Spray, because that just fits as a ranger. And then Lightning Strike, which is a new cantrip, and Sunfletch Strike, which is also a new cantrip. Lightning Strike turns your weapon damage into lightning damage when you use the cantrip, which is really cool, and it deals a little bit extra damage and interacts with lightning charges. Meanwhile, Sunfletch Strike turns your bow or crossbow damage into radiant damage, deals a little bit extra, and it interacts with the Radiating Orb abilities, which is very fun. Finally, there's going to be one big new feature for Rangers because they got a lot of rework. They get to be an instinctual caster. With your honed instincts, you're able to cast certain spells up to once per turn using instinct instead of spell slots. This is a new spellcasting system for the following spells: for Hail of Thorns, Ensnaring Strike, an Ice Knife variant, Cloud of Daggers as a ranger variant, Lightning Arrow, and Conjure Barrage. Each of these spells are now unlocked independently of the ranger spell list, so you get to choose them alongside other ranger spells, and you're going to get to choose one at level 2, 5, 7, 9, and 11. So you're going to unlock all but one of these. For now, if I ever change this and add in more, then you're still going to unlock a bunch of them. You get 5 of them, but for now, you get all but one eventually. Each spell can be cast up to once per turn, as in you can cast with Instinct, the resource used to cast these, once per turn, and all of them, except Cloud of Daggers, can be used with the extra attack feature, and they roll as weapon attack rolls. For example, Hail of Thorns, Conjure Barrage, and Lightning Arrow are now fully weapon attack rolls, meaning they can critically hit with all of their damage, and on a miss, they're still going to deal half of their explosion damage. Not half of the weapon damage, just half of the explosion. And of course, they trigger extra attacks. So you can use, say, a Hail of Thorns and then another bow attack, or a Hail of Thorns and then a volley, or a Conjure Barrage and then a weapon attack, or Lightning Arrow, or whatever. You can use one of these spells and an extra attack. You just can't do that with Cloud of Daggers. Ensnaring Strike and Ice Knife both have weapon attack roll portions and saving throw portions like normal, and they're both going to trigger extra attack. The important thing here is Ice Knife counts as a melee weapon attack, so it inherits your melee weapon's attack bonuses, which is really cool, but it also triggers extra attack, which is very fun. Again, only one instinct spell can be cast per turn, no matter how many actions you have available. This is to keep them balanced, since you're going to also get extra attack, and many of these behave a bit like Area of Effect smites, which would just be ludicrously powerful. At level 2, you're going to gain 3 instinct to cast these spells with, and then at levels 3 through 12, you will gain 1 additional instinct per level up to a maximum of 13 at level 12. To be honest, this might be a little high, but these do have varied costs. Hail of Thorns can go anywhere from 1 instinct up to 3. Ensnaring Strike, I believe, is always 1. I think Ice Knife is always 1 or 2. Cloud of Daggers is like 2, I believe. Lightning Arrow is 3, and I think Conjure Barrage is also 3. But we can check that because I put the spell details on here. Yep. Okay, Ranger also got some new spell additions to their spell toolkit. These are new choices that you can make when they unlock their different spell levels. So you get Entangle, Healing Word, Create Water, Expeditious Retreat, which is super buffed and really good, Enhanced Leap, and Featherfall. These just feel like really good utility options, and they all come from the Druid toolkit, which a Ranger is kind of just a half-caster Druid, so it makes sense. From level 2, they get Enhance Ability, Heat Metal, Moonbeam, and Blur. These again feel very fitting and very fun options for a Ranger. Finally, at level 3, they get the very powerful Sleet Storm crowd control. They get Call Lightning as a damage option. They get Stinking Cloud as another control option. And they get the very, very versatile Glyph of Warding, which just feels right for a Ranger. They feel like they would lay traps, and Glyph of Warding is exactly that. Okay, enough of Ranger. We are on to the Warlock. There's a video for this class as well that you can see up there. The biggest change that Warlock received is that Eldritch Blast has been locked behind the Pact of the Tome. Now, I've got some solutions for this, don't freak out. The reason I locked it behind Pact of the Tome is that Eldritch Blast is just so absurdly powerful that it runs the entire class and really limits the power that the pacts themselves can bring. By shifting Eldritch Blast into Pact of the Tome, there's a significant power budget available to buff the pacts, especially. Pact of the Tome has also received some buffs alongside this because it kind of sucked. Alongside the major Eldritch Blast change, there are some changes to some invocations. Book of Ancient Secrets has been buffed. You can cast these spells using Warlock spell slots, so you can use them more often. Eldritch Training is a new weapon-focused option that gives you +1 to attack and damage rolls with weapons. Life Drinker has been moved from level 11, I think it was, or maybe even level 12, to a level 9 option. And it also works like Agonizing Blast, but it is for weapon attacks instead. Agonizing Blast, on the other hand, the classic Eldritch Blast pair, works with any cantrip that is not a weapon attack. That means you don't lose this passive just because Eldritch Blast is locked behind Pact of the Tome. You're just going to lose the 3 beams. So you don't get to apply your Charisma modifier 3 times per turn or more if you have extra actions just because you have Eldritch Blast. Unless you have Pact of the Tome, then you still get to do that. Repelling Blast has also been changed to work with any cantrip, including weapon attack cantrips. It just moves the target 3 meters down from 4.5. Okay, but on to the real changes. Pact of the Tome. This is where Eldritch Blast now is, and instead of just giving you some spells, you now get a spell that you cast to read your tome to unlock each chapter's spell list. Your first chapter, unlocked at level 3, is going to give you Eldritch Blast, Guidance, and Thorn Whip. Eldritch Blast is obviously insanely strong, and Thorn Whip is now a bonus action. So you're going to get to apply your Agonizing Blast with Thorn Whip as well, and it's really strong. And then Guidance is Guidance. For Chapter 2, which is unlocked at level 5 with the Deepen Pact buff, you get Animate Dead, Glyph of Warding, and Haste. Now these are cast with your Warlock spell slots instead of just a cooldown on the spells. That's going to let you use them more often, which is quite strong and very fun when it comes to Haste. It just means you'll have fewer overall spell casts to work with outside of Eldritch Blast. You're going to have to choose more. Do I want that big sleep Glyph of Warding? Do I want a Haste? Do I want both? You never know. And then you also have your other Warlock spells as well, of course. Chapter 3, this is unlocked at level 9, and this is a banger. You get Deepest Pact, which is a new passive that all the pacts get in order to unlock their level 9 features. Chapter 3 gives you Artistry of War. That is the Giga Magic Missiles. And Dethrone. These are the 2 fancy spells that you can only get in Sorcerer Sundries as special unlocks. Normally only wizards get to cast them more than 1 time from the scroll. Warlocks get a special little treat from their patron so that they can cast Artistry of War and Dethrone. These again use their Warlock spell slots, but they do have their cooldowns maintained. So Dethrone you can still only cast once per day, but it does cost a Warlock spell slot, and Artistry of War can only be cast once per short rest. So you can't like spam Artistry of War 2 or 3 times per combat. You still only get 1 per combat, effectively, assuming you short rest after every combat. Overall, Pact of the Tome is an absolute banger. Artistry of War and Eldritch Blast alone would make Pact of the Tome worth taking, and then you also get Haste and Glyph of Warding that you can use multiple times per day. It's fantastic. Pact of the Tome is so strong. But there's more. Pact of the Blade also gets some changes. The Summon Pact weapon is now much better. Instead of just the default option being to bind the weapon that you have, you get to summon some really cool weapons. Each weapon has a new damage type, so there's cold damage weapons, there's poison damage, there's necrotic damage, there's force damage, and you can choose your weapon type based on what you want. The damage rolls are all the same as their vanilla counterparts, however, they get a unique damage type, which is really cool. So now you can do some really interesting things with effects that play off of your weapon damage type, like sneak attacks and Colossus Slayer and whatever else, right? These weapons also automatically have a +1 enhancement bonus, so they are automatically a +1 weapon. So they're actually good. You can use them the entire game and have a good time. Of course, a +2 or +3 weapon is going to be a little better, but if you want that damage type, you get to use a Summon Pact weapon, and it does a great job with that. At level 5 with Deepen Pact, you're going to get extra attack like normal, and at level 9, you're going to get Banishing Smite and be able to cast this with Warlock spell slots. Banishing Smite is like 5d10, if I'm remembering correctly, which is an insane amount of damage. It does cost an action and a bonus action to cast, and you only get to do 2 or 3 of them per short rest, but Banishing Smite is so strong, so much fun. It's great. It's great. Pact of the Chain also received some pretty big bonuses as well. Instead of the really limited options that are kind of crappy with low health, we're going to get some new options. Each summon is limited by your subclass. So Hexblades summon a big hexed greatsword. Great Old Ones summon an Intellect Devourer. Archfey Warlocks summon the Mud Mephits. Fiends summon the Imp, and the Quasit has been removed, so now the only way to summon a Quasit is through Shovel and Shovel's Scroll. This was done to add some extra flavor to the different subclasses, and they do have different capabilities. The Hexed Greatsword just moves around and hits stuff. The Intellect Devourer, it behaves like an Intellect Devourer. It has a ranged attack, it's got a melee attack. The Mud Mephits can summon other Mud Mephits, and they explode when they die. They're actually kind of goated. It's insane. The Imp is the Imp. It has had some buffs and gotten some extra damage, but it is ultimately just the Imp. And Shovel is Shovel. Yep. At level 5, you unlock Deep Impact, just like all the other Warlock subclasses or Pacts or whatever, and you get a new buff spell that can only target summons. This new spell grants the summoned target extra attack and a 15 temporary hit points Armor of Agathys. This costs an action and a bonus action to cast, so it's really cost intensive to use in combat, but it has no cooldown. So you can just keep Armor of Agathysing your summons all day long. If you find a source of Sanctuary, this could be a really strong option, being able to make them really tanky and deal a lot of damage every turn. This is also a way to solve the problem of increasing their hit points. Instead of giving them more hit points, you give them temp HP instead. At level 9, you're going to get Deepest Pact, which also grants you a new buff spell that can also only target summons. And this one grants the summon target resistance to physical damage for 5 turns at the cost of an action once per short rest. It also grants the target a +3 bonus to all of their base stats. What this lets you do is spend your turn buffing up your summon with extra stats to make them more accurate or better at saving throws, and you also make them tankier and make those temporary hit points from Armor of Agathys last longer and deal more damage. It's worth remembering that this 15 HP from Armor of Agathys means if they get hit, they're going to deal 15 points of damage in cold damage to whoever hits them, which is kind of crazy, if it's a melee attack anyway. However, the biggest thing about Pact of the Chain is that these buff spells are not limited to your summons from the class. Summons from other sources can be targeted by these buffs as well. That includes Scratch, Shovel, Us, Minor Elementals, Myrmidons, Nature Spirits, Animal Companions, Undead, Planar Allies, etc. These summons don't even have to be from the Warlock who is casting the buffs, which means you can buff up an Elemental with extra attack. You can give an Earth Myrmidon extra attack and temporary hit points. You can give a Bear extra attack at level 5. It means Pact of the Chain goes really, really, really well with summoning parties, whereas before, it didn't matter. If you wanted a summoning party, you would do like Beastmaster Ranger, you would play a Necromancer, and you'd play another Necromancer in the form of a Spores Druid. Now, you want a Pact of the Chain in your summoning parties, which is really cool. It's really fun. So that is Warlock. There's a video. Again, you can see that elsewhere on my channel. It is very fun. I know that it is really scary to have Eldritch Blast locked behind Pact of the Tome, but it opens up the options to buff up Pact of the Tome, Pact of the Blade, and Pact of the Chain especially. It also gives you different playstyles as a Warlock. You're no longer feeling like, I have to use this Eldritch Blasting system and that's all I get to do because everything else kind of sucks in comparison. Now you get some really cool options on the side. All right, we're on to Sorcerers. The Draconic Bloodline Sorcerer got a small little rework. They got some additional stuff. At level 3, they get a Sorcerer's Breath Weapon, which is a new breath weapon ability that costs a bonus action and a sorcery point to use. However, when you use that breath weapon, you also grow some Draconic Claws with your hands, and this allows your unarmed strikes to turn into claw attacks for 5 turns, dealing additional damage based on your Draconic ancestry. Your unarmed attacks will use your charisma modifier for attack and damage rolls, unless you are a monk, then it gets confusing. But it's really cool. You get to become an unarmed sorcerer. That's a really weird thing. This damage also scales with you, so it keeps up, which is really fun. And I think the unarmed strikes turn into bonus actions, if I'm not mistaken, but I don't have it written here, so I don't remember, but it's really cool. At level 6, you're going to unlock Draconic Elemental Weapon. This is the exact same thing as the Drakethroat Glaive. It doesn't cost a spell slot to use, and it's really good. It fits. It fits. At level 6, you're also going to unlock additional damage to your Sorcerer's Breath weapon that is equal to your Charisma modifier. So you can use your Breath weapon as an actual source of damage, and it's going to do pretty well. A new feature for the Wild Magic Sorcerer is that you can now summon a Grimishka with 13 hit points to fight for you. It will also react to your spells just like a Wild Grimishka, which means it can turn into a freaking panther. For that reason, this is actually not a long rest summon. It only lasts for 10 turns. But it is still really fun, and you can also get it to like explode, I think. I don't know. This thing can be insane. It's just fitting. It's fun. A little flavor for the Wild Magic Sorcerer. Okay, speaking of Wild Magic, we've got the Wild Magic Barbarian, which was a garbage base class, but now is awesome. Now, this is a change for all barbarians, but Rage is now a free action, down from a bonus action. If Bladesinger Wizards can cast their thing as a free action, then surely just getting real angry is also a free action. This improves the play pattern for barbarians significantly. It just feels so much better that you can just spend the Rage charge. Okay, now Wild Magic Barbarian is now a half caster. A half caster. Technically, you unlock it all at level 3 because that's when barbarian subclasses come into play, but just go with it. It's a half caster. There is a weird bug if you're a full caster and then you take levels to get Wild Magic Barbarian. You will end up with like a weird amount of spell slots. I don't know why that's happening, but it does. So I'm sorry. I don't know why it happens. But anyway, the major new feature for Wild Magic Barbarians is a feature called Meta Rages. These are unlocked at levels 4, 7, and 10 of your Barbarian class, and these are toggleable passives that offer new powers at the cost of rage charges. It's worth knowing you're going to get additional rage charges. Here are the different passives. You've got Distant, unlocked at level 3, which extends the range of your melee weapon and unarmed attacks by quite a substantial amount. You can punch and hit stuff from really far. Really fun. It's a little utility, but it's cool, and I think it might have some synergy with Sentinel and Polearm Master, but don't quote me on it. I just hope it does. I haven't actually tested it. You've also got Empowered, which adds a 1d12 to your weapon or unarmed damage. 1d12. This is basically a Barbarian Smite, which is very cool. Very fun, and if you spend all of your spell slots to get rage charges, you actually get a lot of these per day if you want to use them. They never scale. They're only 1d12, but it is really good. There's also Extended, unlocked at level 3. This is one of your options. And it causes a Wild Magic Surge from a unique Wild Magic table on your next attack. That means you can toggle this passive on and purposely trigger a Wild Magic Surge that can do some pretty wacky stuff. Some of the things are taken from the Wild Magic Sorcerer table. Some of the things are taken from the Wild Magic Barbarian table. And some of them are just new effects. Like maybe you accidentally cast a Thunder Wave when you attack, just like randomly. You just like hit a thing and then it casts Thunder Wave for you. It's pretty sick. Finally, at level 3, you get Subtle as an option, and this is 1 rage charge per attack roll, and it reduces the number needed to roll a critical hit by 4. If you want a crit build, play a Wild Magic Barbarian and spam Subtle as much as possible. This is incredible, and it synergizes so well with the Barbarian kit that gets extra critical damage later on in the levels. Next up, unlockable at level 5, you get Quickened. This is pretty much the exact same thing as the Quickened spells from Sorcerer. You can spend 2 rage charges to cast a spell as a bonus action. And finally, there is Careful, unlocked at level 5. It costs 1 rage charge, and after your next spell or attack, you grant yourself advantage on all saving throws for 3 turns. This is a little bit of a defensive bonus. I don't expect it'll get used that often, but it is pretty good. Advantage on all saving throws for 3 turns is pretty good for 1 rage charge. All right, at level 4, you're going to unlock this new ability, Furious Conversion, and this just allows you to convert spell slots into rage charges. It's not at level 3, it is at level 4, so you do have to level a little bit in order to unlock this. Finally, Wild Magic Barbarians get a new feature called Rage Casting. Your Wild Magic Rage does not prevent you from casting spells while raging. Instead, you're actually going to deal 2 additional damage with non-weapon attack spells while raging. The Blade Cantrips do not count as this. They actually inherit the regular rage damage bonus, so they didn't need the buff. This means if you do something like if you do like a scorching raise, you're going to deal 2 extra damage on every beam, which isn't a lot, but it is like the equivalent of like a 1d4 added to each beam, which is really cool. And it also means you can pair this with a full caster for some extra spell slots and magic missile for like some really, really interesting barbarian damage build, which is really cool. More on the Wild Magic Barbarian. It is a half caster now, so spell slots, all leveled spells are chosen from the Sorcerer spell lists. The spell slot progression is the same pace as Paladins and Rangers, so you're going to end up with level 3 spell slots at the end, and you'll end up with 3 level 3s, 3 level 2s, and 4 level 1s, I believe. At level 3, you're going to get to pick 2 blade or bow cantrips and 2 spells from the level 1 spell list. At level 4, you get to pick 2 meta rages, and you unlock Furious Conversion, and you get an additional rage charge. At level 5, you pick 2 spells from the level 2 spell list. At level 6, you get Bolstering Magic. This is a vanilla feature. At level 7, you get 1 new meta rage from the full list and another rage charge. Level 8, you get 1 new spell from the level 2 spell list. At level 9, you get Bolstering Magic. This is vanilla again. And you get to pick 2 spells from the level 3 spell list. At level 10, you get your final meta rage from the full list and +1 rage charge. Overall, this means you're going to get 2 cantrips. They are only the weapon attack cantrips. That's all you get access to. You're going to get 2 spells from the level 1 spell list. You're going to get 2 level 2 spells plus 1 more level 2 spell. So you're going to get 3 level 2 spells. And then you will get 2 level 3 spells. And that's it. You have a very, very limited spell selection. I would recommend choosing offensive ones, not defensive ones, but do what you want. Wild Magic Barbarian is now absolutely cracked. It might actually be a little bit too good, but maybe that's okay. All right. What page are we on? Oh my gosh, we're only on page 36 out of 60. This is going to take forever, guys. We're on to the Bard. The College of Swords Bard has had range slashing flourish nerfed. It can no longer target the same enemy twice. It was overpowered and we all knew it. This just brings it down to where it should have been from the beginning. College of Valor has received a buff. Combat Inspiration, this is their version of Bardic Inspiration, now applies to both you and your target. So it doubles the value of a Bardic Inspiration. It gives you extra attack rolls, extra damage, extra saving throws, whichever one you want for you and your target, which is really cool. They also get a fighting style, which you get to choose from archery, defense, dueling, or protection. Those all felt fitting for a Valor Bard. Very fun. And they also get 1 extra hit point per Bard level from the Fortitude passive. Druids, Circle of the Stars, they've had a small nerf to Dazzling Breath because it was way too strong. Way too strong. It's now 2d4 that scales to 4d4, down from 2d6 to 4d6. This is just more reasonable. It's still too strong, even like this. Circle of Stars is absolutely cracked, okay? All right, Clerics. First up, there's been a general change. The potent spellcasting ability that's unlocked at level 8 for certain Cleric subclasses now adds your Wisdom modifier to non-weapon attack cantrip damage. That is the same as Agonizing Blast, which is really good. It's no longer limited to only Cleric cantrips, which was like 1 or 2 cantrips, I think. It is for any cantrip, as long as it doesn't have a weapon attack component. So none of the weapon attack cantrips like Booming Blade, Lightning Strike, Zephyr Shot, or Sunflesh Strike, which we're going to talk about later. Trickery Cleric. Trickery Domain got a massive buff. Invoke Duplicity no longer sucks. It has been reworked into a toggleable passive that costs a Channel Divinity to use. When toggled, it rolls a DC 16 Deception check to impress your god or goddess. If you pass the check, you can cast any spell as a free action. So it works kind of like Quicken Spell, but it's even better because it doesn't cost a bonus action at all. But if you fail the check, you can cast a cantrip as a free action, which is still quite good. I really like this skill check in combat thing, and so Trickery Cleric got it. This is really good. It makes them the action economy king of the clerics, which is really strong. At level 3, I've also replaced Pass Without Trace with Shadow Blade, which I have not nerfed Shadow Blade. I should, but I have not. So this is also really, really strong. It also fits really well because Pass Without Trace just like, it's redundant with Trickery Cleric's level 1 feature that gives advantage on stealth checks. So like, they didn't need this. Okay, War Cleric. They get a new passive at level 6 called Hardened War Priest, and this makes their War Priest charges regenerate on short rest. This is a much healthier version of what I had before, which gave it extra attack at level 8, and it enables some extra attacking earlier in the build, which is really cool. I do have some more changes planned for War Cleric to make this even better, so that if you're paired up with a class that has extra attack, you don't waste the War Priest charges on your first 5 turns of the game or whatever. You'll actually get to choose when you want to use it. I just have to go ahead and do that. I haven't done that yet because I just talked about that with people yesterday. Knowledge Cleric, they're going to get some changes in 2.5, which is coming eventually. We'll see. They're going to get some wizard-like features without being able to learn spells. It'll be pretty interesting. All right, on to the wizard subclasses. Conjuration, they get to create water as a class version. This spell is now a bonus action down from an action. It doesn't sound like much, but now you can use a bonus action create water for free once per short rest, I believe, to double your lightning damage or your cold damage or whatever. And it's a bonus action. It's fantastic. Enchantment, they got a buff to Hypnotic Gaze. It receives a +2 bonus to the save DC. It doesn't sound like much, but this can be used to make bosses unable to act in a fight for several turns and can be battle winning on its own. So it's really strong that it gets a +2 bonus to DC, but it doesn't actually change the way the ability works at all. For the Illusion subclass, they get a massive change. Their Illusory Self, which used to be a level 10 feature, is now a level 2 feature. Once per short rest, you can just make any attack miss, which is great. At level 6, you get Third Eye Dark Vision and See Invisibility. These spells allow you to see invisibility, and the Dark Vision version, which is the really powerful one, gives you full dark vision, including seeing through magical darkness. So the Illusion Wizard is much, much better now. At level 10, you get Greater Illusory Self, which is when you use your Illusory Self passive, you're automatically going to cast Mirror Image on yourself and get 3 mirror images for an extra 9 armor class for up to 3 attacks, which is fantastic. Illusion becomes a really good class at keeping itself alive. Transmutation Wizard has also received some changes. At level 2, they get Medicine Expertise. If you have proficiency from some other source, you still have to source that proficiency, but once you do, you get Expertise, making those potions much easier to double. At level 6, you also get a new cantrip called Transmuter Stone Throw. It is a new cantrip with a sort of combined animation. It's custom to just this class, and it's a short-range magical rock throw of a sharp stone that deals 1d12 plus intelligence modifier as base damage. The cantrip scales up to 3d12 plus your intelligence modifier at normal cantrip levels, so by the time you've unlocked it, it's actually 2d12 plus your int modifier, which is really, really good. That is the highest base damage cantrip in the game. It's very fun, and it plays around with the Transmuter Stone that the Transmutation class already gets. This is some extra notes for Ranger NPCs. Several of the classic Ranger spells have been buffed or reworked, except they weren't included in the class. They were buffed and done before I did the class changes. These include Hail of Thorns, Ensnaring Strike, Conjure Barrage, and Lightning Arrow. They're all noticeably buffed. You're not going to get to use them, but NPCs are going to, and they're going to actually extra attack you with Lightning Arrow, and it's going to hurt. So be careful when you fight the Warden in Moonrise, because she has Lightning Arrow, and she will spam it on you. It's kind of fun. Archfey Warlock has also gotten some independent changes. Its level 1 Fey Presence ability is now just one ability of both effects, instead of the short rest frighten or short rest area of effect charm. It's just you get a chance to frighten and charm at the same time. Archfey are beautiful and terrifying, so it works. You get one spell that makes them save against charmed and frightened. So Archfey Warlock's got a little independent buff. Okay, we're getting there. Oh my gosh, we're on page 40 now, and we are at the cantrips. Oh my gosh, so many changes. Okay. Cantrips, Acid Splash. This now deals 1d6, but there's no saving throw. This is guaranteed damage, baby. This is fantastic. You can't miss it. It's so good. And if you add in stuff that can buff your acid damage, for cantrips especially, you can add your intelligence modifier. You can add whatever modifier you are able to do so. You can actually beef this up to a decent little cantrip for area of effect damage. It's guaranteed. It's guaranteed. It's great. Blade Ward. This now costs a bonus action down from an action, but it has a per combat cooldown. So once per combat, you're going to get to choose, do I want to Blade Ward? That's it. That's the big change. However, there's another change. At levels 5 and 10, Blade Ward actually gets 1 extra turn in duration, so you get up to 4 turns at level 10, which makes the decision a little bit easier. Initially, I had this as just a bonus action with no cooldown, and it turned out you just wanted the Blade Ward every single turn, and that was really boring. So it now only works once per combat. If you get 2 different casting modifier versions of this, you can get 2 Blade Wards per combat. Say if you get Blade Ward from, I think Clerics get it maybe, so that's a Wisdom modifier. You can use it, and then if you get Blade Ward from Warlock, that's a Charisma modifier, so you can actually cast it twice, which is a pretty cool interaction. But yeah, this makes Blade Ward both more valuable and less valuable at the same time, which is pretty fun. Booming Blade has had its damage die reduced in size for the additional attack damage, not the damage from walking. So it's 1d6 and then 2d6 at levels 5 and 10 respectively, and then it's also got an additional 1 damage at levels 1 to 4. This is because the 2d8 from the cantrip was really strong on top of your weapon attack, and you got to use it with extra attack. It just, it was too strong, and it made things like Thunderous Smite less valuable, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. And so I nerfed the damage by like 2 average damage. It's not a huge change, but it is a change. Booming Blade is still absolutely cracked though. Like, don't worry. Though there might be an even more cracked blade cantrip that we'll talk about. Bone Chill. This now deals 1d6 plus proficiency bonus before scaling. I think this is an average of 1 extra damage at every scaling level, which is pretty good. Dancing Lights. This is the crappy light spell that no one ever used. Well, now it is a pocket sunlight in its area of effect. So it's a miniature daylight spell that costs your concentration, I think. Just kidding. It does not cost your concentration anymore. And sunlight can be used to give disadvantage to like Drow and Dwergar and some other creatures, which is really nice. It can also be used to harm like Cazador. It can also be used to harm Cazador as a cantrip. It has very limited uses, but it is technically better than it was before. Firebolt, this now deals 1d8 plus your proficiency bonus before scaling. Again, it's like 1 extra damage per level. It just means your minimum damage is way better, which just feels better. You're no longer going to roll a freaking 1. You will at least roll a 3, which is very nice. Guidance no longer requires concentration. Poison Spray, 1d10 plus proficiency bonus. Again, same rules as the other ones. Produce Flame is 1d10 plus proficiency. And it no longer removes itself without dismissing it on purpose. This makes it so much better to use. It's just a big quality of life change. And then as we talked about earlier, you can actually dip your weapon in the produced flame to add the fire damage to your weapon. So you don't have to carry around a candle anymore and drop it and place your weapon in it and then use that for your fire. No, just summon a flame, walk around with it. It makes that min-maxing crap so much more accessible and so much more fun. Ray of Frost, 1d6 plus proficiency before scaling. Again, 1 extra damage per cantrip level. Resistance. This now costs a bonus action down from an action and has the once per combat cooldown, same as Blade Ward, but it does still require concentration and it lasts for 10 turns. Sacred Flame. This is the one that now always misses. It is now an attack roll instead of a saving throw. Some people don't like this change. I'm sorry, Garson. It's great. It's just better. It's so much more fun to see a Sacred Flame crit, and it has a really like unique ability to just target an enemy instead of like have a projectile fired at them, so you don't have to worry about like line of sight as much. As long as you can see the thing, you can hit it with Sacred Flame, which is pretty cool. I do know that people miss the saving throw a little bit, but overall I think the attack roll is much more usable. Let's keep going. Shillelagh. Shillelagh now lasts until long rest and can be used on any simple weapon. Any simple weapon that includes light crossbows and short bows. So you finally have a way to use ranged weapons with your spell modifier, which is really cool. The damage is unchanged, so it's 1d8 or whatever. And a caster can only apply 1 Shillelagh to 1 weapon at a time. This is really cool, actually, and has resulted in situations where on a run where I used Shillelagh, I swapped back and forth between melee and ranged combat with a simple melee weapon and a short bow, which was super fun. It was really cool. You can get crafty though and use it in conjunction with the pacted weapon or key weapon for some actual like dual wield builds, which is really cool. Shocking Grasp, it now deals 1d4 plus proficiency damage bonus, which I think is around the same average damage as the vanilla version, which is I think a 1d8 melee cantrip. It's pretty close. It's not much lower, but it only costs a bonus action to use. So if you land a Shocking Grasp as a wizard or whatever, you have a disengage tool, which is really nice. It only deals a little bit of damage, but it is a really good bonus action to have and can encourage playing your spellcasters a little more risky than you normally would, which can be a lot of fun. Thorn Whip. Thorn Whip is also a bonus action, but it does not add your proficiency bonus. It's a 1d4 plus 1, then 2d4 plus 2, then 3d4 plus 3. So your proficiency bonus -1 when it scales at cantrip level. This was inspired by Sorrowful Lash from the Sorrow Glaive, which is really cool. And it's really fun to be able to displace enemies with a pull instead of a push with your bonus action. And you get just a little bit of damage out of it as well, which is pretty fun. Sorrowful Lash, though, has also received a change. It is buffed. It deals 1d8 plus 1, then 1d10 plus 2, and then 1d12 plus 3, scaling at cantrip levels. So it ends up in the same place, but it starts out ahead for the first 2 cantrip levels. So it has a place in a build that wants to use Thorn Whip as a bonus action. Next up is True Strike, which also costs a bonus action and has that once per battle cooldown like, what was it? Like Resistance and Blade Ward. But it also isn't consumed on an attack against the target. So you get it for 2 turns, so you can use it on your first turn, get advantage on that attack, and then on your second turn, you still have True Strike against them, and you can use it on more attacks. At levels 5 and 10, True Strike can also be cast on additional targets, up to 3 targets at level 10. This just means if you kill the first target that you cast True Strike on, hopefully you have a backup target that you can move to on your next turn. It doesn't really make a huge difference, but it does mean there is a benefit to leveling with True Strike. Finally, Vicious Mockery deals 1d8 plus proficiency bonus and damage. This is a big damage change, but it does not apply to Dirty Trick Vicious Mockery, which keeps its vanilla damage. Oh man, I need some tea. Okay, there are also some new cantrips. We've talked about these a little bit. First up is Lightning Strike. This is just so cool. It is a melee blade cantrip that converts your weapon damage into lightning damage, and it builds 1 to 3 lightning charges when you land a hit with it, and it deals 1d4, or 2d4 additional lightning damage, depending on the cantrip level. The additional damage and lightning charges only work once per turn, but you can use the cantrip more than once per turn. What that means is on the first hit in a turn, if you're like level 5, you will deal your weapon damage plus 1d4 and you'll generate 2 lightning charges. The second time, you can use Lightning Strike again with your extra attack, but you will only deal your weapon damage, but it will still deal it as lightning damage. So it works with extra attack, it just doesn't work giving the extra damage every time, which is a balancing measure. On top of this, it is available to sorcerers, wizards, warlocks, rangers, and druids. The next new cantrip is Sunfletched Strike, which works the same way as Lightning Strike, but instead of being melee, it is a bow cantrip that converts your weapon damage into radiant. This also inflicts 1 turn of Radiating Orb on a hit and deals 1d4 or 2d4 additional radiant damage. The additional damage only works once per turn, but the Radiating Orb portion of it actually works with extra attack. And this one's available to druids, rangers, clerics, and sorcerers. It is so much fun to use Sunfletched Strike. It is one of my favorite abilities that I've ever made. Next up is Zephyr Shot. This is based on the level 1 tabletop spell, Zephyr Strike. And this is another bow cantrip that deals an additional 1d6 or 2d6 force damage on top of your weapon's damage. This is sort of a ranged variant of Booming Blade, but instead of damaging the enemy if they move after you hit them, if you land a hit with this cantrip, you're actually going to gain 3 additional meters of movement speed. And this is available to wizards, sorcerers, and warlocks. For reference, any cantrip available to wizards is also available to arcane tricksters, eldritch knights, and high or half elves. And the same applies to the initiate feats for the various classes named above. Now, one important thing to know is that once you've used Lightning Strike, you cannot use Sunfletched Strike or Zephyr Shot in the same turn. And once you've used Zephyr Shot, you can't use Sunflesh Strike or Lightning Strike or Booming Blade. They're all mutually exclusive. Once you've used a Blade Cantrip, you cannot use another Blade Cantrip for the rest of that turn unless you have a second action. There are some funky interactions with this. The coding for it was very difficult, and I didn't manage to get it perfectly right because sometimes the things apply when the projectile hits and sometimes it applies when it casts, and that causes some really funky results. So you'll figure it out. There are rules baked into it, and you'll see what happens when you do that. But they can't be combined with each other. So you can't like Booming Blade and then Lightning Strike for a bunch of extra damage. That doesn't work. You can Booming Blade or you can Lightning Strike. You can Booming Blade or you can Sunfletched, and so on and so forth. Enjoy these. These are very fun to make, very difficult to make, but very fun to make as new cantrips for us to play around with. And they are game changers. Lightning Strike, for instance, can be used with vulnerability to double the damage, which makes it insanely strong. Sunfletched Strike can be a part of a really good Radiating Orb party, and Zephyr Shot can just make your movement speed absolutely nuts. It's very fun. We're getting there. Level 1 spells. Arms of Hadar. This spell sucks. I still haven't used it. My wife laughed. This spell still sucks. You add your spellcasting modifier to damage. Maybe the 2 times it's going to get used when Wyll starts that one fight, it'll be a little more useful. Feel free to try it. Yeah, good luck. Bane no longer requires concentration. I've heard this is really overpowered, but I've only heard it from one person because it's really good in tabletop apparently. But yeah. Burning Hands. Upcasting this spell increases damage by 2d6 because melee distance should be rewarded over a ranged fireball. This does mean at level 3, Fireball and Burning Hands do the same amount of damage, but as you go up in spell levels, Burning Hands will overtake Fireball, I think at level 5? No, it's at level 4 spell slots. It'll deal a little bit extra damage. That doesn't make it better than Fireball because it's riskier to use, but it does make it a little more rewarding to upcast. Color Spray is now a bonus action down from an action, so you can blind enemies with a certain amount of hit points pretty easily. Yeah, have fun spray painting people's faces. I don't know. Cure Wounds, this is an interesting one. This doesn't use a spell slot, but it can only be cast in combat. And it also cannot be upcast past level 3, and you can only use it once per turn. That per turn, though, is per spell level, so you can use a level 3 and a level 2 in the same turn, or you can use a level 2 and a level 1 in the same turn. You just can't use 2 level 3s, 2 level 2s, or 2 level 1s. Technically, there are 4th, 5th, and 6th level spell slots for this, but they all stop scaling at level 3. You lose the benefits of upcasting past level 3. We talked about this already, but Divine Favor now lasts until Long Rest. It's sort of a lower damage Hunter's Mark that costs less action economy and doesn't stack with your weapon damage because it's just radiant. So it has some benefits and some drawbacks, especially against enemies with flat damage reduction. But it's way better than it was. It was thoroughly mediocre before, and now it's good. Ensnaring Strike now no longer requires concentration, and it lasts for 3 turns, down from 10 turns, which is quite a good trade-off. It's still a really strong ability. It just doesn't last as long, which is fine because they get a saving throw every time, so you were never getting 10 turns anyway. Entangle, this is the plants on the ground that can stop people from moving. It no longer requires concentration, so it's like a low-level plant growth, but they make a saving throw. Expeditious Retreat. This is so inspired. This one's so good. It lasts for 5 turns, down from Long Rest, but it no longer requires concentration. That's fine, but that's not the big deal. The really big deal is that casting the spell initially is a free action, but it costs a spell slot. Subsequent dashes still cost a bonus action. Effectively, Expeditious Retreat is a free action dash that costs you a Long Rest resource. That is so cool and adds so much mobility to wizards and Eldritch Knights and Arcane Tricksters and Rangers and whoever else gets this. I think those are the big ones. It is very fun. It's kind of an alternative to Misty Step. It is a free action, so you still get to use your action and your bonus action, and it gives you a bunch of extra mobility. It's really, really cool. It also makes the beginning of the game feel so much better when your mobility options are still pretty limited. It's also so good that some of the feats that we're going to get to aren't as strong as they sound because this is just so strong. Okay, Fairy Fire. This one gets a +2 bonus to the save DC of the spell at all times. It's just easier to land. It doesn't do any damage. It doesn't do any crowd control. It just makes enemies easier to hit. So it's not a huge effect. It should just be easier to land. False Life. This is so strong. It receives an increasing flat damage reduction every second level upcast starting at level 1. So you get 1 flat damage reduction at level 1, and then you get all the way up to 3 flat damage reduction at level 5 spell slots and beyond. False Life is so good. It lets you make yourself tanky. Before, it was just like, here's some temporary hit points. Why would I use this over Armor of Agathis? And now False Life is like, I want to be defensive, but I don't want to be an Abjuration Wizard. I'm going to use False Life. It's so good. I actually really like this spell. It also applies to the Warlock version of this spell. Theirs is a special variant. I think it gives like 8 temporary hit points and 2 flat damage reduction or something like that. It's not just the level 1 cast. It's got some little special condition on it that's not noted elsewhere. All right, more level 1 spells. Good Berries. The berries spawned with the spell heal 3d4, so they are just basically potions. That's it. They're basically potions. It's a decent spell, especially if you can get free casts of it through your ranger class. If you're a druid, it's not as worth it, but it's still pretty good. Guiding Bolt. I made these changes, and honestly, I probably didn't need to, but instead of upcasting and getting additional damage dice, your die size increase up to 4d12 at level 4 spells. Level 5 and 6 spell slots then increase the die count up to 6d12 at level 6, which is not bad. That's up to 72 damage. But honestly, I don't think this change was very good. You let me know what you think if you're somehow watching this video like 2 hours in. Hail of Thorns. This spell now works with extra attack, and it does not have a saving throw. All damage is based on attack rolls. On miss, the explosion still deals half damage. I have never seen an enemy use Hail of Thorns, so I don't know if this is ever going to affect you. But this is what the other Hail of Thorns that isn't the Ranger's Instinct version actually does now. It's very good, but I don't know if you're going to see it until I make a Chocolate Edition enemies mod. All right, Heroism. Heroism is cracked. It no longer requires concentration, and it adds the effect of Bless. So it works kind of like the Heroism potions. You generate 5 temporary hit points every turn for 10 turns. It doesn't require concentration, and you become blessed. It is a melee distance spell, and it's only 1 target, I think, per upcast level. So your level 1, it's only you. Level 2, I think you can add a second target. Level 3, I think you can add a third, and so on. So it's pretty expensive to use, but man, is it good, especially in the early game. Longstrider gets the quality of life effect that it affects all allies in an area. That's so nice. It saves you so much time. Like, so much time. Protection from Evil and Good. This is going to get the same change as Shield of Faith that we're going to see in a second. It costs a spell slot and a bonus action to cast initially. You can cast it on yourself. Then from there, for the rest of the day, you can recast it as a bonus action on yourself or any ally. So you're granted the buff for 5 turns on initial cast, and then again 5 more turns on recasts, and it does not require concentration. It's very good, but it is much more action economy intensive than it used to be. It used to be just use it, and then you have it while you're concentrating, and now you have to maintain this buff throughout the day. Shield of Faith now works the same way as Protection from Evil and Good. It no longer requires concentration, and the initial cast can only be on the caster itself, so you can't like camp cast this on somebody and then let them cast it for the rest of the day. There is a note that's not here, but it might be later. The Sword of Justice just has the recast on it, so you can just give anyone Shield of Faith for 5 turns per day, which is pretty cool. Searing Smite. It no longer requires concentration, and it lasts for 5 turns, down from 10. Honestly, this could probably use more buffing. Honestly. Thunderous Smite. This deals 2d6 damage, scaling to 2d8, and then 2d10 at levels 5 and 10, respectively. That just makes it deal more damage than a Booming Blade, which it should. It's a smite that costs an action and a bonus action and a spell slot to use. It should just be better than Booming Blade, but it still technically deals less damage. Like 2d10 is not comparable to 2d6 plus 3d8 if you get all the damage out of Booming Blade. But this is still much better than it was. It's worth noting this scales at cantrip levels. It's a level map. It is not actually like required to upcast this to get the extra damage. Wrathful Smite does the exact same thing, and it also no longer requires concentration. Shadowheart's Wrathful Smite, if you remember that, is a unique variant and has its own scaling. It is a different thing, and it doesn't cost a bonus action. Whew. Okay, level 2 spells. Level 1 spells took a while. Level 2 spells. Bark Skin. This has gotten a complete rework. This sets your armor class to 14 plus your constitution modifier until long rest. It no longer requires concentration. Upcasting this spell now grants 1 additional base armor class per spell level up to 18 armor class at level 6. This makes it a competitor with the Armor of Agility and Armor of Persistence if you wear the Amulet from the House of Hope that gives you a bunch of Constitution. Pretty neat. The Elixir of Barkskin and Barkskin Armor both provide 16 armor class plus Constitution modifier, which is the equivalent of a level 4 cast of the spell, which is really good. These are actually good now, which in the vanilla game they kind of sucked, but now they're pretty solid. 16 plus Constitution can be 18 AC, 20 AC, like pretty easily, which is nice. Blur, this now lasts 3 turns at the cost of a bonus action and does not require concentration. Branding Smite, no concentration. Calm Emotions, no concentration. Crown of Madness, this is maybe too good. It costs a bonus action down from an action. It is very fun, but Crown of Madness is not guaranteed crowd control. You have to really position well to make good use of this. If you're watching my Sonny and Paul run, you can see me die because of this. I got Shadowheart absolutely clobbered in 1 turn with a bad Crown of Madness placement. So it's not always perfect. It's a little risky, and so it's a bonus action down from an action. The Dark Vision spell is unchanged, but there are many more sources of magical Dark Vision available, like through the Magic Initiate Warlock feat, the Elixirs of Dark Vision, the Way of the Shadow Monk's Dark Vision ability, and Third Eye Dark Vision. All provide some means of obtaining magical darkness Dark Vision, which is really, really strong. Detect Thoughts. It grants advantage on intelligence checks while active. I think someone said this was bugged, which is not good, but it's supposed to do that, so I need to look into that. Enlarge and Reduce. This costs a bonus action down from an action, so you can actually buff yourself up with this in combat. You don't have to just metagame it or, like, I don't know, buff an ally or whatever. It's not just for owlbears anymore. You can use it on yourself, and that's really fun. Enthrall is now a ritual spell, which this is the one that like makes people turn and look at you. It's an out of combat spell. Like, don't use this in combat. Flameblade, this now lasts until long rest. You could already do this by just bugging the game out, and so I just made it possible. It just lasts till long rest. It's still not as good as Shadowblade, but it's pretty decent. Flaming Sphere now costs a bonus action down from an action. It's fun to be able to summon just a big ball of fire as a bonus action. I don't know. It's good. Magic Weapon, it no longer requires concentration. It lasts 10 turns, and it costs a reaction plus a spell slot to cast down from an action. So it's not concentration, but it does cost a resource to use consistently. Also, the scrolls still cost an action. Yeah, this is cool. I haven't actually tested this one out yet because I made this change after I finished my latest run, but I think this should feel pretty decent. I think. Maybe, I don't know. It was just really overpowered when I had it last all day at no concentration. And it was useless when it lasted all day, but required concentration. So I tried to make some compromise. It costs something to use, and you have to maintain it, but it lasts long enough for like an entire fight. So I don't know. You let me know how Magic Weapon plays, and maybe we'll go back to the drawing board on this one. All right, last level 2 spells. Melf's Acid Arrow. This is just like Acid Splash. It no longer requires a saving throw. It is guaranteed damage. You're welcome, Garson. Upcasting it increases the damage by 2d4 per level, which isn't great, but again, it's guaranteed. Mirror Image lasts until long rest so that you don't have to metagame it. You can just be like, it's the morning, I'm going to buff up with Mirror Image, and then you go fight Raphael or whatever. Moonbeam mitigated the Sanctuary Cheese with this spell. Casting this spell or the move variant afterward will properly remove the Sanctuary debuff, but it's only a partial fix. This is a very confusing spell to code with. Sanctuary is not going to end concentration on the spell like it does with other offensive spells, and enemies being damaged by the spell will not remove Sanctuary. However, you have to leave it alone now. So if an enemy moves out of it, your Moonbeam can become useless if you're trying the Sanctuary cheese. This is a nerf. It needed to be done. It was overpowered. Phantasmal Force. It applies a -5 penalty to intelligence saving throws if they fail the initial saving throw, and it costs a bonus action down from an action. Phantasmal Force still sucks. It does. I thought this would buff it. I thought there were more intelligence saves. There are not. There's like 3 in the whole game or something, and one of them is from Mind Flayers stunning you. So it's just not good. I need to go back to the drawing board on Phantasmal Force and figure out what I can do to make this better. Ray of Enfeeblement. This no longer requires concentration, and it also halves weapon damage from dexterity-based weapons. So if you want to make an enemy deal half melee damage, or just half weapon damage, Ray of Enfeeblement is a great option. Finally, Web no longer requires concentration. You can get Web from without concentration from like 2 different sources really easily. A Beastmaster Ranger with a spider summon, or you can just be the spider as a druid. It doesn't make sense that it required concentration. You put webs on the ground and they can burn on fire. Why would that require concentration? I don't know. All right, we are on to the level 3 spells. We got Bestow Curse. It is now a charisma save instead of a wisdom save and no longer requires concentration. This should make it easier to land because enemies' charisma saves are generally pretty bad. But I don't know if the curses are actually worth using. I have not used this spell in a run, but I think it should be better. Some of the curses might be good. I don't know. You let me know. Blink. This is a bonus action, and it lasts 10 turns. Upcasting it to level 5 or level 6 turns it into a free action, so you can set it up much more easily, and it dispels when combat ends. If you watch my Sunny and Paul run, which you can do by joining as a member for $1, you'll see why. You will. It's rough. Okay. Conjure Barrage. Again, I don't think you're going to see this, but it deals 3d8 plus weapon damage up from 2d8, and it's also an attack roll, making it usable with extra attack, but a miss still deals half damage. Crusader's Mantle. This is a Paladin spell. Allied weapon attacks now deal an additional 2d4 radiant damage up from 1d4, so it just makes it a little bit stronger. If I'm not mistaken, this might be wrong. It might be 3d4. Do I have a Paladin that I used this with? No, but it came from an item in the Sunny and Paul run towards the end. You guys haven't seen it yet. I'm pretty sure this is 3d4. Don't quote me. It's 2d4 or it's 3d4, but it's much better. Crusader's Mantle is really good now. Elemental Weapon. This no longer requires concentration, lasts all day, but it has a once per long rest cooldown, so you can only cast it once per day. This just balances it out with the Drakethroat Glaive. If the Drakethroat Glaive didn't exist, then I wouldn't have done this, but it does exist, so like this is better than Magic Weapon, but they can be stacked on top of each other, I think, which is kind of crazy. Feign Death has been completely reworked into a new spell called Invite Death, which is insane. It applies the effects of Sanctuary to all allies except the caster in a massive radius for 3 turns. It has a once per combat cooldown. I've got no clue if any enemies have Feign Death ready to go, but if they do, this spell has been flagged to be of use to them, which could be fun. So for 3 turns, everything is going to attack you. If you really want to save your allies, or if you want to like put this on a Cleric and you use Death Ward when you get knocked down to that 1 HP and you want that one final thing, you cast Feign Death and it applies Sanctuary to everyone. If I'm not mistaken, this also applies Sanctuary blocked to yourself, so you will get attacked if you use this. Unless you like go invisible or something. In which case, that's pretty cool. Grant Flight. This now lasts all day and requires concentration. This is not the best way to get flight, but if you want to spend a slot and concentration on it, you can have it when you want it, and you don't always have to have it. Haste has received a massive nerf. It no longer grants +2 armor class or advantage on dexterity saves, and it receives a -2 penalty to all saving throws. These changes affect the actual haste status effect and any potions or spells that would cause the same effect. Celestial Haste is the only one unaffected by these changes because that's from an endgame weapon and just feels appropriate. It's celestial haste. It's godly haste, you know? Anyway, I made a bunch of these changes because I've made other ways to manipulate or improve your party's action economy, and haste can take that power and just crank it even higher. This should dial back some of that power by making it a much larger risk to be hasted, even when gaining the effect from a potion. So haste is no longer just a surefire way to get an extra action and stay safe and powerful. It's pretty dangerous to haste yourself, especially as a sorcerer. If you're like twin casting haste on 2 targets, you probably don't want to put it on yourself, because if you lose concentration, yeah, it's bad. It's bad. I don't know. Haste is much more high risk, high reward gameplay now. Lightning Arrow. It's now an attack roll, making it usable with extra attack, and a missteal deals half damage. Again, the Warden in Moonrise is going to wipe the floor with you if you're not careful thanks to this. Double Lightning Arrow hits are a lot like getting smited, but an area of effect, which is kind of terrifying. Protection from energy. This no longer requires concentration. I think I kind of think it's still bad. I think it might still be bad. It's like resistance to elemental damage or something, right? I think that's bad. Vampiric Touch, it now lasts until long rest, but it still requires its concentration. So now you can cast like a level 6 Vampiric Touch and just run around all day sucking the life out of everything. It's pretty fun. All right, level 4 spells. There's just 2 changes here. One of them is to Stone Skin, which is now a little strong. It lasts until the next long rest and no longer requires concentration. And Stone Skin gives resistance to all physical damage, not just magical, and it provides up to 2 damage reduction from all but force and psychic damage when upcast to level 5 and level 6, respectively. It cannot stack with Bark Skin and can only be applied to 1 creature per caster. This does mean it can be used with a camp caster, which does annoy me, but I'm not going to try and fix that. Scrolls of Stone Skin have also had their value increased to that of a level 6 spell, so they're a little harder to get. Stone Skin is basically an armor of persistence in your pocket for a decent spell slot. At level 4, you're going to get resistance to all physical damage, so it's like a long rest blade ward. And at a level 5 spell slot, you get 1 flat damage reduction from almost all sources. And at level 6, you're going to get 2 flat damage reduction from almost all level sources, or from almost all damage sources, which is really, really strong. Dimension Door. This is the level 4 spell that's effectively Misty Step with a friend. It now costs a bonus action down from an action, so it really is Misty Step with a friend. Level 5 spells. Flame Strike. This is like the small circle fireball that kind of sucked. This now deals extra damage. Deals 8d6 fire plus 5d6 radiant at base, with each damage type receiving 1 extra die on upcast. So it is higher damage than fireball, smaller location, kind of just a trade-off. You now have options with Burning Hands, Fireball, and Flame Strike for similar amounts of damage, but not quite the same. Wall of Stone, this is the one where you become an Earthbender, which is like sick. It no longer requires concentration. Level 6 spells, Circle of Death. This is going to deal 48 necrotic damage on a failed save, and it deals 8d6 necrotic damage on a successful save. I still don't know if this is good, but you can soften up an entire room with this pretty easily now, because if stuff fails its save, it takes maximized damage, which is pretty great. And if it doesn't fail its save, if it passes its save, it still takes a level 3 fireball's worth of damage. But also, like, that's only a level 3 fireball's worth of damage for a level 6 spell. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it could use more buff. Another level 6 spell that got a buff is Flesh to Stone. This spell automatically receives a +4 bonus to its difficulty class. Stage 1 of this effect is unchanged. Stage 2, the target loses their bonus action. And Stage 3, the target loses their bonus action and has disadvantage on Constitution saving throws, which makes it more likely to succeed. I don't know if this can just like one-shot bosses if you live for 3 turns, but it might be able to. That +4 bonus to DC means if you can cast this, it might be pretty powerful. Blade Barrier. This is just a bug fix. The DC for the initial and recurring ticks are now based on your caster's difficulty class, so that it's actually like okay. Class spells, I should really move this into the class section. Second Wind now heals for more. It's 1d6 plus 2 times your fighter level. So at level 12, this is like 24 plus 1d6, like an average of 27 healing. I don't know. That's actually a second wind right there, right? That's actually a second wind. And that is all of the spell changes. We're getting there, guys. We are on page 49. I think we just have the feats. Okay, rebalanced feats. Actor received no changes. Alert received a big change. Alert is now +1 initiative, down from +5. Remember the initiative changes that we talked about a long time ago. And it does have another buff, though. It grants an additional reaction point with no other changes. So you can do like some crazy reaction builds using alert, especially like Lae'zel with her riposte. You can get 2 ripostes in one turn. And if you use the duelist prerogative, you can get 3 ripostes off in one turn with Lae'zel's class, which is insane. In addition to that, this change to alert, elixirs of vigilance have been nerfed to +3 initiative in this mod, but enemies are not affected by this change. If they have vanilla alert, I have ensured that they keep vanilla alert to preserve the initiative bonus they were designed to have. They're also not going to have that additional reaction point. So vanilla alert is unchanged. This is a new version of it specifically for player characters. Athlete received a bonus, +1 to strength and +1 to dexterity. No other changes. So this lets you jump super far and gives you +1 strength and +1 dexterity. So if you built like an odd number of strength and an odd number of dexterity at the beginning, you can now even both of those out with 1 feat while getting some other benefit instead of just a really boring ability score improvement. Charger. Charger shove only costs a bonus action and you get +1 to strength or dexterity. Crossbow expert has been renamed to archery expert. And all ranged weapon attacks that are not thrown have a chance to apply gaping wounds to the target. All ranged weapon attacks from bows or crossbows can be used in melee distance with the same rules as crossbow expert from before. You also get +1 to dexterity. This gaping wounds bonus is the one that makes targets take an additional 2 damage from all sources. So archery expert is quite potent. It also applies to all of your ranged weapon attacks, not just a piercing shot, which is super strong, like super strong. Defensive duelist. This adds +1 to dexterity, and when attacked while wielding a finesse weapon, you can add your proficiency bonus to your armor class for the rest of your turn for the cost of a reaction. The attack does not need to be melee, and the armor class bonus persists until the start of your next turn, like the shield spell. It's basically a feat for +1 dexterity and a shield spell. However, it scales with you, so at level 1 to 4, defensive duelist is not actually that strong. It's only a +2 to your armor class. But when you take it in the late game at level 10, it's +4 to your armor class and doesn't cost a resource to use, which can be quite strong. Dual wielder. This gets +1 to any ability score and no other changes. Dungeon delver. This has gotten a complete rework. It adds proficiency and advantage for all perception checks, and you can cast knock. That's the spell that unlocks things at will. So nice for exploration. Dungeon Delver is the exploration passive. If you want to do it, this is the way to do it. It also gives you basic training and wisdom, which sets your wisdom to 13 unless it was otherwise higher. Dungeon Delver is so good. I actually love it. It's such massive quality of life, especially if you've played through the game and you kind of know what you want to unlock, or if you've got a character who should really be good at like going into dungeons and taking artifacts, but you don't want to go like a dex build for them. Dungeon Delver is a great option. Durable. This now gives you +2 constitution up from +1, and you gain shield proficiency with no other changes. If you are on a class or a character that does not have shield proficiency and you want it, this is a great option to get it. +2 to constitution that gives you a bunch of extra HP. When you short rest, you full heal and you get shield proficiency. Like, durable is super fun now. Elemental Adept. You get +1 to any spellcasting stat with no other changes. Great Weapon Master. This has had a rework. You now get a -2 scaling to -4 penalty to your attack rolls, down from just -5. What this actually means is that you basically lose your proficiency bonus for great weapons. However, you get to deal increased damage, which now scales from 1d4 up to 3d4 alongside cantrip scaling levels at levels 1, 5, and 10, respectively. This change makes Great Weapon Master overall worse than what it was, but still in a pretty good spot, and it synergizes better with critical hits and and Savage Attacker, because 1d4, 2d4, and 3d4 will all get doubled when you land critical hits, which is perfect because the passive also gives you that extra bonus from critical hits. Heavily Armored is up next, and it gives you +1 to any ability score, +1 armor class, and no other changes. If you want to be tankier, this will do it. Heavy Armor Master does it maybe even better, though. It decreases all damage that you take by 2, up from only non-magical physical damage, and you get +1 to Constitution and +1 to Strength. Heavy Armor Master is a defensive powerhouse of a feat. Of course, you are giving up a feat, but it is really strong. Flat damage reduction just scales so well. I have probably added too many sources of it, but if you don't want to take any damage, you can just be an Abjuration Wizard anyway. This gives you more options to be an Abjuration Wizard. I don't know. Fight me. Lightly Armored. This gives you +1 to Constitution and to Dexterity, also +1 armor class. If you are taking a feat to get light armor proficiency, honestly, this isn't enough buffs. Okay, you need even more. Lucky, there are no changes. Honestly, there should be. I know people like them. I actually really want to use Lucky. I just hate the reactions tab popping up, and Lucky is all about the reactions tab. So maybe I should make another version of Lucky that doesn't have that. I'm going to go write that down. Mage Slayer. This adds your proficiency bonus to saving throws against spells regardless of distance with no other changes. Martial Adept. You gain 2 Battlemaster die per short rest up from 1, and it guarantees you proficiency with martial weapons. If you need weapon proficiency, become a Martial Adept. You're going to get the Battlemaster die plus the Battlemaster maneuvers, and you're going to gain proficiency. This is a pretty great feat now. All right, Medium Armor Master. This gives a bonus to your maximum armor bonus from Dexterity while wearing medium armor. It's now +4 up from +3. Without the feat, it's +2. With the vanilla feat, it's +3. And now with this feat, it's +4. And then you also get +1 to Strength or Dexterity. This probably isn't great. This could probably use some more bonuses to make it comparable to Heavy Armor Master. But medium armor is already so good, giving you so much armor class that, I don't know. There are some really good medium armors in the game. Mobile. This increases your strength or dexterity by +1. This just makes it a really good mobility feat and lets you do some really fun stuff with disengaging by hitting stuff. I don't know. Moderately armored. This unlocks proficiency with medium armor, and you're going to get +1 to any ability score and +1 armor class, similar to heavily armored. Again, if you're taking this feat to get medium armor proficiency, like, you need the bonuses. I don't know, but it lets you do more things. Okay, the Magic Initiate passives. These have all been changed and updated and made a bit more fun. So, all spells and cantrips learned through a Magic Initiate feat now cast with your spell casting modifier instead of the class that they're from. This just makes them more versatile and better. Each of these feats also, including the 2 new Magic Initiate feats, which we'll get to later, grant basic training in their respective spellcasting stat. So Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma. Basic training sets that ability to 13 if it wasn't already higher. If you have 8 Charisma and you take Magic Initiate Bard, you're going to get your Charisma set to 13. But then if you add 2 more Charisma to it, 13 is still higher than 10. So it's still going to be set to 13. It does not go to 15. Your minimum is set to 13, but to get your maximum above that, you have to have it naturally above 13. I've had a lot of questions about that, so I just wanted to clarify that. It works just like the Elixirs of Strength in the vanilla game. Okay, Magic Initiate Bard. You gain musical instrument proficiency, you learn a level 1 Bard spell that can be cast once per short rest, and no other changes. Honestly, Magic Initiate Bard is the worst of these and needs a buff of some sort. Because a lot of these have some really fun or powerful bonuses. Magic Initiate Cleric, this one you gain +1 to attack rolls and +1 to saving throws as a permanent blessing. Lost on respec, of course. So this is based on the bless spell, like you're blessed by your god, you gain +1 attack rolls, +1 to your saving throws. Then you also get a level 1 spell that can be cast once per short rest with no other changes. Magic Initiate Druid. You gain the ability to wild shape into a cat at will, which is so much fun. You also learn a level 1 spell that can be cast once per short rest with no other changes. Sorcerer. You learn 2 sorcerer cantrips and gain 2 sorcery points. And you learn 1 meta magic. You can pick from extended spell or twinned spell. This can be a lot of fun. It lets you twin cast cantrips, or you can extend something like, I don't know, a blade ward, which is quite cool. Up to twice per day with your 2 sorcery points, which is really fun. Warlock. You make a minor deal with a minor being, and you learn 2 Warlock cantrips and 1 Warlock invocation. You do not learn any Warlock spells, other than the cantrips, of course. The invocations are from the level 2 Warlock list, so you can get Agonizing Blast with your cantrips. You cannot pick Eldritch Blast, though. Warlock does not come with Eldritch Blast because that's locked to Pact of the Tome. You can pick Bone Chill and Zephyr Shot and Blade Ward and the other level 1 Warlock cantrips. You just cannot pick Eldritch Blast. Magic Initiate Wizard. You can learn 2 spells from the Wizard spell list that can be cast once per short rest with no other changes. I'm not actually confident. I feel like maybe I changed that. This one is stronger than it sounds because it buffs your initiative, because you can get intelligence from it. You can get Expeditious Retreat for extra mobility, and you can get something else. I don't remember what that something else is, but I remember thinking, man, Magic Initiate Wizard is strong. This is really good. Performer, you get musical instrument proficiency and expertise and performance and no other changes. So that means you get the +1 to charisma. Honestly, Performer is just a better version of Magic Initiate Bard. So maybe this needs to just be increased charisma and not basic training. I'm not really sure. Like maybe Performer just needs to be deleted and Magic Initiate Bard needs to get expertise and performance. Yeah, not quite sure. Polearm Master. The bonus action attack from this now deals half of your basic weapon damage, the dice plus modifier, and all of your weapon attack riders. This is a separate fix from the one that came out in patch 8. It's not strictly necessary anymore, but I already did it, and undoing it is annoying. It's not actually annoying, I'm just lazy. I say as I read a 3-hour-long patch note video. Resilient has received no changes. This feat is already very good. Ritual Caster. You learn 3 ritual spells up from 2, and you gain basic training in 2 abilities of your choosing, setting the minimum value of those abilities to 13. If you want to be just like an all-arounder, Ritual Caster. You did a lot of yoga, you learned a lot of spells, you got a lot of basic training. It's good. Savage Attacker. No changes. It's really good. Sentinel. No changes. It's also really good. Sharpshooter. This has gotten a complete rework. You're going to learn a few new abilities. You're going to learn Improved Brace, which allows you to re-roll ranged damage die when you make attacks with it, and use the higher result for 3 turns per use. It costs your movement speed. It costs 5 meters of movement speed down from 6, and it has no short rest cooldown. So there's no cooldown on this Brace. It's really good. It lets you re-roll your damage, but it's not insane, and it does cost your movement speed. You're also going to learn another ability called Sharp Shot, which is a ranged attack action that costs 9 meters of movement speed to use and can be used once per turn. It does not cost an action. It does not cost a bonus action. It only costs movement speed. Like the maximum default movement speed for your race is what it costs. And it cannot be used while dash is active. You can Sharp Shot and then dash, but you cannot dash then Sharp Shot. Yep. It gives you +1 dexterity. The damage on this also scales from levels 1 to 4. It's half damage. From level 5 onward, it is full weapon attack damage. And that's just to balance it because it was way too strong otherwise. Providing, I think it was like +10 damage, which is the same as what a vanilla sharpshooter was doing, but it didn't have any penalty built in other than the movement speed cost. So it was a little too strong. Now it's very good. But it's not broken. Shield Master. I fixed a vanilla bug. And now while you have at least 1 reaction point available, you decrease incoming physical damage types by 1d4. This is the same kind of thing that Lae'zel's Githyanki Parry does. So if you have Shield Master and your Lae'zel, you can reduce your physical damage incoming by 2d4 as long as you have that reaction point, which is pretty nuts. Skilled. You're going to gain proficiency in 2 skills of your choice, down from 3, and then you're also going to gain adept training in 1 ability of your choice, which sets that ability score to a minimum of 15. If you have one of those characters that is very multi-attribute dependent, this can be a way to get one of those minimum scores up to 15, say Constitution if you want to dump that, or Intelligence if you want a bunch of extra initiative, or Charisma for skill checks, or whatever. This is a really good way to get that now. Spell Sniper. This increases the range of your spells by a quarter, and it increases the range of melee spells by a few meters. It also gives a +1 to spellcasting stat with no other changes. That means Spell Sniper gives you increased critical hit threshold, a better critical hit threshold for your attack rolls, and it increases the range of spells by a lot. It is a very, very fun, it's a very fun feat for spellcasters now. Tavern Brawler. This one got a major rework. You only add half of your strength modifier to attack rolls for thrown and unarmed and improvised weapon attacks, down from your full strength modifier. Additionally, the increased damage for these is now decoupled from your strength. It is now just plus 1d4, then 1d6, and then 1d8 alongside cantrip levels at levels 1, 5, and 10, respectively. This just makes it so you can play it as a dexterity character with a little bit of strength, and you'll get really good value out of it. Or you can just add it onto a dexterity character. You still get the extra damage, but you don't have to build the extra strength. It's a much healthier position than it was. Tough. This is the one that increases your HP by 2 per level, I think, and it just gets 1 flat damage reduction. That is still insanely strong, but Tough was like all right before. It was really hard to justify it because it doesn't boost any offensive stats. It just gives HP. But now it gives 1 flat damage reduction, which extends those HP that you're getting way more. Warcaster, you get +1 bonus to any spellcasting ability. No other changes. Finally, of the vanilla feats, Weapon Master has also been reworked. It no longer grants +1 to strength or dex, and it no longer gives proficiency in weapons of your choice. Instead, you gain proficiency with 1 weapon type of your choice, and you double your proficiency bonus to attack rolls with that weapon type. You will receive a -10 penalty to attack rolls with all other weapon types. Unarmed attacks are not included in this. What this means is you can pick like a greatsword and you can double your proficiency bonus to attack with it. If you pair that with Great Weapon Master, you're going to end up with a vanilla +4 proficiency bonus to your weapon. But if you don't have Great Weapon Master turned on, you're going to end up with a +8. This is effectively the Deadshot bow in a feat, but it works with the Deadshot bow as well. I think a Deadshot bow can get +12 to attack with just your proficiency bonus, which is really cool if you take Weapon Master with longbows. Very fun, very cool. But that's not all. There are new feats. So let's go over those. There's Fighting Initiate. This gives +1 to strength or dexterity, and you learn a fighting style of your choice from the fighter fighting style list. That means you can take dual wielder, or 2-weapon fighting rather, from this feat and get that extra offhand attack that we talked about earlier. Light Armor Master. This is to match up with Heavy Armor Master and Medium Armor Master, and this is what it does. While wearing light armor, you gain +1 to your armor class, attack rolls, spell save DC, and initiative. This is very potent. There are not very many good light armors in the game, so the feat needed to be potent to buff those up a little bit. Deadly Alacrity. This reduces the number needed to roll a critical hit by 1, and it increases any ability score by 1. You can only take this one once. It's a very good general purpose feat. It may be too good as a general purpose feat, but it's fun. Flight. Flight grants the ability to fly at will, which is so cool, and it gives you a +1 to any spellcasting ability score. This might be overpowered. It is not as good as the vanilla flight ability. It does not double your movement speed while you're flying. It's only 1.5 times, which is still really good and probably too good for kiting, especially for solo players. But it's just so fun to be able to fly at level 2. It's so fun. There's so many cool things you can do if you can fly in Act 1. So this exists. Also, the flying animations just look great. I love them. Another new feat that I made is called Insightful. This gives +1 to intelligence or wisdom, and you gain expertise and insight and investigation. This is like a conversation feat, kind of like actor, but for wisdom and intelligence builds, because insight and investigation can be really good in conversations, which is really cool. Zealot, this is another new feat. This is just so strong. You pick a god via a passive that your character is going to worship, and then you gain 1 additional channel divinity charge, and you learn a unique to this feat channel divinity ability called Zealous Wrath, which allows you to maximize any damage roll at the cost of a channel divinity charge and a bonus action. It is really strong. It's effectively the maximizing lightning and thunder damage from a Tempest Cleric, but it works on any damage type, but it costs a bonus action instead of a reaction like it does on Tempest Cleric. It's really strong. It's really fun. And it pairs just so incredibly well with so many Cleric subclasses. Devious, this adds +1 dexterity, intelligence, or charisma, and you're going to gain proficiency in stealth and sleight of hand, as well as learn cunning action, hide. So you have the ability to hide as a bonus action, which is really cool, as well as buff up one of these stats. Very fun. You can get a little roguish without actually being a rogue. Power Nap. This is a funny one. If you're listening this far, this ability's icon looks like the sleep spell, just so you know. A lot of people have asked that. They're like, how do I use Power Nap? Where is it? It looks like the sleep spell. I didn't have a better way. I think I should probably change it to the Feign Death look, but I don't know. Anyway, you restore all level 1 spell slots or Warlock spell slots once per day by taking a Power Nap. It has no other effect. This is not as necessary anymore because I buffed up Paladins and Rangers. Like, I could realistically remove this feat, but it is really fun for Warlocks because you can restore your level 5 Warlock spell slots with a Power Nap, which is just kind of neat. And there's still more new feats. There are so many. Okay, Magic Initiate Paladin. This gives you a level 1 Paladin spell usable once per short rest. That includes Divine Favor, so you can just kind of always have Divine Favor up, which is really cool. And you gain basic training in Charisma, setting it to a minimum of 13. You also gain 4 Lay on Hands charges and the ability to use them for their healing abilities. This version of Lay on Hands scales with your character level instead of your class level. Then there's Magic Initiate Ranger, where you gain 1 level 1 Ranger spell usable once per short rest, so probably Hunter's Mark. Then you're also going to gain basic training and wisdom, setting it to 13, to a minimum of 13. And you're going to gain a +1 to weapon attack rolls and a -1 damage taken. That's really good. Magic Initiate Ranger is really good. +1 to weapon attack, -1 to damage. That is solid. It may not be that fun, but wow, is it good. This is another really fun new feat, Reckless. This is the answer to when I removed the Fast Hands passive from Thief and moved it to level 6. You gain an additional bonus action at the cost of a -3 penalty to all saving throws. You get to move faster, but you're going to take a penalty. Reckless is very good for all of those glass cannon builds that we were making that wanted extra bonus actions. Reckless is so much fun. You also get it sooner, so those kinds of builds can come online way sooner, and it just opens up the door. Here's a new one in version 2. This is actually not in the improved feats mod. This is called Focused Caster. When you have a free hand, you are a more potent spellcaster. So while you're only wielding one weapon that is one-handed, versatile, a short bow, or a long bow, you're going to gain +1 bonus to your armor class, your spell attacks, and your spell save DC. This is kind of a play on the spell casting focus from D&D tabletop, but as a feat. So as long as you're only wielding one of these weapons, it's one-handed, it's versatile, a short bow or a long bow, you gain +1 to your armor class, spell attacks, and spell save DC. It's very potent, very powerful, very fun. This is another, this one's really good. This is cool. Poisoner. Your poison damage ignores resistance and immunity to poison damage. You can summon poison in your hand and dip your weapon into that poison, a lot like Produce Flame, and it adds 1d4 to your weapon attacks. You cannot have both poisoned and burning with Produce Flame. This makes Poisoner just makes poison builds possible. There's not a lot of poison spells and everything in the game, but if you have another mod that adds those, this becomes really potent. It also makes like the weapon poisons you can apply to your weapons better. It makes the poison items better. It makes poison spray better. This is basically necessary to make poison work in Act 2, especially. All right, we're on the last new feat. This is called Fighting Finesse. With finesse weapons, you reduce the number you need to roll a critical hit by 1. You also increase your weapon damage with critical hits by 1 dice. And these effects can stack. What that means is that if you have a 1d8 weapon, a finesse weapon, say a rapier, that rolls a critical hit, normally it would be 2d8. With Fighting Finesse, it will be a 3d8 attack. And if you're like an orc and maybe a barbarian, you can keep adding these dice on. So if you wanted to max it out, you could use a rapier on a leveled up barbarian as a half orc with Fighting Finesse, and you will end up critically hitting and hitting for 5d8 damage with a single weapon. That is so cool. It's so much fun. It makes critical attack builds kind of more viable, especially for one-handed weapons. Whew. Okay, there's all the feats. We've just got a few more things, some miscellaneous changes. Okay, with miscellaneous changes, we've got increased enemy health. Enemies have 45% increased health on Tactician and Honor mode, up from 30%. It's not a massive increase, okay? It's just a couple points of health across all enemies, but it does add up, and it's trying to make the enemies a little bit harder to kill since I've added in so many additional sources of damage and action economy. Honestly, I think this could be raised up to 60%, and it would still be very balanced. Like, it would still feel pretty good. Another change is the 2-weapon fighting style. We've talked about this. This fighting style now grants an offhand version of extra attack at level 5 and beyond for melee weapons only. Hand crossbows do not get the extra attack. That is a new change in version 2, and it was necessary because hand crossbows, even with the sharpshooter nerf, actually ended up being like the most powerful weapons in the game, which was not the goal at all. Hand crossbows make no sense. Okay, guys, they just don't. Some other changes, we made some changes to some conditions and passives. Radiating Orb has had its maximum stacks reduced to 5, down from 10 or 7 or whatever it was. It was way too high. 5 is the lowest I can make it go without trying to make a whole new system for stacking. And it's really confusing how to make these things stack, so I didn't want to do that. Arcane Acuity has had the same thing. Maximum stacks is 5 to make it a little bit less good. Another change, Tenacity, the weapon passive, now applies weapon functors like Smite and Damage Riders, and it's no longer a flat damage value based on your strength. The damage formula for this is your main hand melee weapons damage dice divided by 3. This is a really big buff to these weapons because it now means you can't miss a Smite if you're using Tenacity, and you can't miss your Damage Riders. I made this change though because with the Channel Oath Smite ability that I made, if you hit Tenacity, you would spend the Channel Oath charge, but you wouldn't get the damage for some reason. It was really confusing because you wouldn't get the damage, but you would get the sound effect and the spell cost, which didn't make sense. The sound only plays when you actually get the damage, but the damage wasn't coming out. It was weird. So just to avoid the bug, I made this change to Tenacity. Okay, I've also done some item changes. Blood Guzzler Garb, I fixed the tooltip, which is good. Linebreaker Boots, I fixed the tooltip here, and the Cap of Wrath, I think I fixed the tooltip. The passive here works different, which is odd, but theoretically, all of these are fixed, and so is the Enraging Heart Garb. These are all of the Wrath items, and now they actually work correctly. Elven Chain, this is an Act 3 armor that is sort of supposed to be like clothing, but sort of like medium armor. The way it's talked about in the game and in the lore that the game presents is that it seems like it should be as good as the Armor of Agility and Armor of Persistence, but it never was. So now I've buffed it. The Elven Chain now works with unarmored defense variants and mage armor, and it counts as the clothing armor type and has no limit on adding dexterity to the armor class. Effectively, that makes this clothing that adds +3 to your armor class, +2 to initiative, and advantage on dexterity saving throws. This is really good and should function something like the armor of agility for monks, barbarians, bladesingers, and sorcerers with mage armor active. It's also very reasonable to get up to 23 armor class with this armor, a shield, mage armor, and a +5 dexterity modifier. Basically, the Elven Chain is now good. My wife is laughing at me again. This says many more item changes coming soon. I'm not confident of that anymore, but maybe a version 3 will have a bunch of items. Who knows? There are a few more gear changes, though. All of the adamantine weapons have received a buff. The scimitar has adamantine speed, which is this, while not dual wielding, you can make an additional attack at the cost of a bonus action. It's a rebranded version of Duelist Prerogative from Act 3, which unlocks that playstyle early on. It's super fun. Adamantine Longsword is now a 2d6 longsword while you're wielding it with both hands, and a 1d10 while wielding it with one hand. This makes it the best monk weapon in the game now, and a fantastic greatsword alternative dealing the same damage, but it ignores resistances. Very solid all around. It's basically a greatsword you can put in one hand if you want. Finally, the adamantine mace deals 1d10 damage, and it unlocks the Heartstopper weapon ability, which is just a stun, and it has the tenacity weapon ability. So it's more like a Morning Star than it is a mace, but it deals bludgeoning damage and it's 1d10. It's really good. All right, we've got 3 more items and then we're done. The Sword of Justice, we already talked about this. We remove the cooldown. It doesn't require concentration, and it applies Shield of Faith for 5 turns at the cost of a bonus action. I said this earlier. The listing earlier in the guide was wrong. This is the correct version for the Sword of Justice. Daredevil Gloves. This is Wyll's class ability and the Daredevil Gloves Daredevil Proximity passive. The Daredevil Proximity passive has removed the check for an enemy threatening you. This is now just a toggle passive that will make any ranged spell into a melee spell, which means it's not random and buggy condition spam anymore, which is so nice. I had so many bugs with this in a run that I did. I fixed it, okay? Finally, Moonlight Glaive. This weapon's damage type is now radiant instead of slashing, which is pretty freaking cool. It can definitely get you killed in certain damage or in certain situations, but a radiant damage glaive is very fun. Okay, I lied. We're not done. There's still a few more miscellaneous changes. Fierce Perilous Stakes. This is the transformed Illithid ability from the end of the game, and it has gotten a major nerf. Truant, you're not watching this, but you kind of inspired this one, okay? Each character can only have one instance of this ability active at a time. So it's still a bunch of extra damage, but it's not infinite extra damage. Here's the dev comment from me. This is a little petty, but I'm tired of seeing challenge run videos where the end is just to win the final fight with 7 stacks of Fierce Perilous Stakes active, and enemies being blown up with 300 psychic damage from 1 magic missile, Artistry of War, Ray of Fire, Slayer arrows, and arrows of many targets. This change should balance that last fight out quite a bit so that you might actually have to bring enough damage to defeat the brain. If you rely on this, Truant, I'm so sorry, but yeah, I want to see you do the fight, man. I really want to see you do the actual fight. Okay, Elixirs of Strength, these have also been nerfed. The Elixir of Hill Giant Strength, it increases your strength by 4 up to a maximum of 30. So if you want a good buff from this, you actually have to build for strength now. If you have 16 strength, this is going to get you to 20, just like it would have normally. But if you get to 20 strength, this is going to get you to 24. The Elixir of Cloud Giant Strength, same thing. If you're at 16, this is going to get you to what, 23 strength? But if you get to 20, it's actually going to get you to 27, which is really strong. So as I say here, this change is a bit of a wash. Instead of setting minimum strength levels, the potions boost your strength quite high. That means the investment of at least 16 points into strength, you can achieve roughly the same power level as before. But if you have less than 16, you're going to get a nerf. However, if you decide to go all in on strength and sacrifice some spellcasting modifiers, some health, mental saves, or armor class, you can get some ludicrously powerful strength characters going. The choice is yours. These are no longer the best in slot elixirs for just so many characters. It's going to change a lot. Finally, Resonance Stone. This has been nerfed. It no longer grants advantage on physical checks. It increases the movement speed cost of you and anything else within the aura by 1.5 times. So you move slower while you're in it. And it reduces your initiative by -5 because you're just so distracted by your induced happiness. The Resonance Stone still provides vulnerability to psychic damage, but if you're going to use it, it's going to make you significantly more risky. It reduces everything's initiative by -5. So if your party's grouped up on a Resonance Stone user at the start of a fight, everyone's going slow. Okay? Be careful. I have heard this got somebody killed before they even got to use a turn. This is how I nerfed the Shadowblade. Shadowblade's still really, really, really strong, but this is how I nerfed it. Okay? Resonance Stone is worse. So good luck. We made it, guys. Page 60. And that's wrong. It's not version 1.5. This is version 2. All right. Have fun. If you've got some questions, join the Discord. Check out the YouTube page. Check out the mod page. Wow. It's been 2 hours. Until next time, I'll see you all in the next excuse.